the blue colossal beast dancing with the dawn clouds, occasionally letting out a majestic roar, as it patrolled its domain, asserting its authority over this land. The once silent forest also became lively, with countless flying birds flapping their wings and emerging from the dense treetops, causing the beasts within the forest to scurry about in alarm. A giant dragon, shimmering like green jade, flew over the jungle, causing wild winds to rustle the leaves of the forest as it was surrounded by the flock of birds. The people of Golden Harbor Town had grown accustomed to such scenes, with everyone busying themselves. Adventurers and prospectors grouped together and stepped into the tall, lush jungles, beginning their daily tasks. Only the newcomers in the town would look up at the sky with surprise, exclaiming loudly, only to be met by clothing racks thrown from the windows of the second floor by ladies still in bed, which ended up breaking a few fools' heads. Some people carried axes, sickles, and hoes, following the oddly shaped kobolds and centaurs, the dragon's beloved, into the forest. Outside the town's perimeter, tall wooden stakes were driven into the flat ground, with monster heads impaled upon them. These were the heads of the Shawa fishmen who invaded the town. There were also heads of beasts and creatures who tried to sneak into the town to prey, as well as the ferocious kinds that were not accepted by the dragon group. Among them were also human and dragon's beloved heads, those of fools who defied the giant dragon's will, now impaled to warn both monsters and humans alike. However, to the people, this sight didn't evoke fear. Instead, they saw it as a representation of order. Every kingdom had its unique order, and the dragon's domain was no different. These people followed the barking kobolds to a river area near the center of the forest. There, they would clear fertile fields near the riverbanks as planned by the giant dragon, planting relevant crops. The seeds of grains and various vegetables, traded from human nations or brought by adventurers to the land of Golden, would be attempted to be planted in the cleared wasteland. As per the giant dragon's plan, the forest's riverbanks would be planted with wheat, barley, potatoes, and corn, becoming the granary of the domain. Of course, these grain seeds needed trial planting to see which crops were best suited to this land, with the high-yield crops selected for cultivation as the main crops of the future. However, since it's about clearing forest for fields and developing wasteland, the first year's harvest might not be ideal, even if the land is fertile, requiring meticulous cultivation for more returns. Now, with a severe lack of manpower in the domain, only a slash-and-burn method of extensive farming could be adopted. Thankfully, this land's climate was warm and rainy, ideal for crop growth. These planted grains could be harvested at least 4 or 5 times a year, temporarily compensating quantity for quality. A kobold supported a hunchbacked human as they stopped in front of the land about to be cleared, appearing respectful towards the human. This kobold, named Bag, was the nephew of Bag, the leader of the Dogman tribe. According to inside information he received from leader Bag, those giant dragons seemed intent on having their dragon's beloved learn to read and write. Because the dragons found these dragons' beloved too foolish, the dragons favored intelligent and capable beloved, not dullards. Thus, the dragons' beloveds also began to respect knowledge and wisdom, though they still revered strength. This old man was a holder of knowledge and wisdom among humans, therefore earning the respect of these kobolds. Cough, cough, the human elder, Ham, was over 50 years old, considered quite an age among ordinary people. He once was a serf of a noble baron, and under the noble lord's promotion, he learned that after coming to this land, he could become a free person. He could use his own hands to secure a footing for himself, so he decisively decided to take his family on the noble's ship and arrived here. They were the first humans to step onto this place through trade. He, along with his family of 6, brought enticing gold coins to the noble baron, while ensuring a beautiful future for themselves. In fact, given an opportunity, many ordinary people could also show keen insight and the courage to strive. The experienced former serf Ham bent down, grabbing a handful of black soil with his dry, thin hands, carefully grinding it between his palms, his somewhat murky eyes lighting up and displaying a joyful smile. "This is truly a good land, Hom stood up and surveyed the surroundings with satisfaction, his aged, dry voice filled with excitement. I have never seen such fertile land, perhaps only the noble lord's core family domain might have it. He turned and spoke to the kobold, Bag, this entire piece of land is suitable for planting with its leached black soil. According to the town's current scale and your reported number counts, perhaps only this much land needs to be developed. Hom used his bony fingers to delineate a range in front of him. Opening up this land will suffice to temporarily meet the food demand, and with meticulous cultivation in the future, crop production will increase after the land is familiarized. Even with the undeveloped land, just cutting down these dwarf pines and short palms and shrubs would allow for scattering some crop seeds without meticulous care. Discussing his area of expertise enlivened the human elder Hom, as he led the jubilant, circling kobold Bag and pointed out the spaces between the trees in the forest. In these spaces, even without enough manpower to fell the trees and develop fields, you can scatter seeds of chickpeas, carrots, peas, and pumpkins. These crops can thrive without our care, with high yields, also supplementing the lack of vegetables, eliminating the need to gather wild vegetables from the forest. Nor would we need to trade with other humans' principalities. The land could even be prepped early for the next text. Hom's eyes shone brightly, as if glimpsing a bright future, and he suddenly sighed. These noble giant dragons are truly generous, even willing to share such fertile land with us ordinary people. Thank you, great true dragon. Woof, woof, the kobold Bag was so elated that he forgot to speak the common language, engrossed in remembering every word the old human said, to report it to his superiors, proving he too was a capable kobold, not just a fool in the dragon's eyes. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 100-49, A Few Odd Matters. Chapter 100, Chapter 49, A Few Odd Matters. Don't miss out as you're passing by, delicious potato and cabbage soup, 2 copper a bowl. Mushroom muffins, freshly baked, with a wonderful aroma, not tasty, no charge. Wild mountain deer and boar freshly hunted this morning, plump and fresh. The street vendors selling seafood, cooked food, and wild game were shouting noisily, attracting adventurers and town residents hurrying by. The early morning in Golden Harbor town was particularly lively and vibrant. Centaur warrior Sunaya, along with the centaur warriors from her tribe, hurried down the bustling street with captured Shawa fishermen slaves, who needed regular hydration with seawater to survive on land. However, the enticing aromas from the roadside caught the attention of the centaur maiden. She signaled for the team to stop, walked up to a small stall, and asked, "Give me a mushroom muffin, plus a mushroom soup, how much?" "Oh, a small breakfast, it's worth nothing, just take it," the middle-aged man behind the stall replied with a flattering smile. He knew this centaur warrior held a certain status among the dragon's beloved and was one of the town's law enforcement officers, hence his deferential attitude. Centaur maiden Sunaya shook her head, took out a few copper coins from her pocket, and tossed them to the middle-aged man. She then picked up a mushroom muffin and mushroom soup and began eating on the spot. As Karon's most loyal beloved, the centaur tribe strictly adhered to the will of the giant dragon. After Karon explicitly prohibited any acts of extortion or freeloading, Sunaya had been very careful. Moreover, the related laws were gradually taking shape under the discussions and studies of Blue Dragon Das and Blue Dragon Axi, requiring all, whether they were dragons beloved or residents, to abide by them in the future. Even those giant dragons dare not defy the will of the Red Dragon Lord, as the Kingdom of Dragons is not a democracy, but a world of absolute power. Besides, Sunaya, as a capable subordinate within the dragon's beloved, received periodic rewards from the dragons. Though these rewards had peculiar names like salaries or wages, Sunaya was not in want of money. Due to her frugal spending, she was considered affluent among Tier 1 centaurs. The centaur maiden savored the delicious breakfast, feeling that the culinary standards of these humans, while not matching the half-elf chefs from her tribe, were a nice occasional treat. At this moment, a fat merchant in the crowd suddenly stopped in front of the Shawa fishermen slaves, examining the wooden signs hanging on their chests for a long time before speaking. "Why are these Shawa fishermen slaves so expensive? 3 silver coins each, can't you make it cheaper?" While munching on the delicious mushroom muffin, Centaur Maiden Sunaya mumbled, "Are 3 silver coins really expensive? These Shawa fishermen slaves are strong and can serve as guards. You can also send them into the sea to catch seafood and search for treasures for you. With these Shawa fishermen slaves, those precious corals, conchas, and pearl shells in the ocean would be an unguarded treasure vault for you to amass wealth." Sunaya swallowed her food and attempted to persuade the merchant. Selling the Shawa fishermen slaves would earn her a commission. It seemed that now the Centaur Maiden had also been influenced by the giant dragon lord's penchant for accumulating treasure. The Centaur Maiden's eloquence convinced the fat merchant, who stroked his chin and calculated aloud, spending 3 silver coins on 1 Shawa fisherman slave, with even a basic enslavement scroll costing 5 silver coins. I've got to figure out how many fisherman slaves to buy, when to break even, and how much profit I can make. After mumbling for quite some time, the merchant finally decided. He ordered his guards to hand over 15 silver coins to the Centaur Maiden. "I'll take 5 of the strongest Shawa fisherman slaves." The Centaur Maiden gulped down the mushroom soup in her hand, then pocketed the silver coins with a beaming smile. Her small chest would hold a few more shiny silver coins tonight. "Damn it, be careful, this is the smith's most important furnace. Don't break it, or if you delay Karon's affairs, you won't even need me to act, your leader will thrash you fools." In the professional realm, the irritable and demanding dwarf warrior Klagan shouted loudly, while several timid centaur warriors and kobolds stood dejectedly before the roaring furnace, listening to the dwarf's reprimands. These relatively smart and strong warriors from the tribe were selected to apprentice at Dwarf Klagan's newly opened blacksmith shop. According to Karon, no matter how skilled one dwarf blacksmith may be, he can't meet the demands of all the dragon's beloved. Now Dwarf Klagan, appointed as the artisan official by the giant dragon, was specifically tasked with training apprentices and teaching these beloved the craft of forging. Thus the dwarf warrior had great ambitions. Previously, he spent the money he earned from adventuring on drinks, living a not-so-poor but unstable life. Now, not only did he own a blacksmith shop, but he also attained a certain status within the dragon's kingdom. This allowed him to be quite cocky when he stepped out, although, with the blocky stature of a dwarf warrior, walking sideways wasn't much different. However, the only thing bothering him was that these apprentices were too dumb, constantly frustrating him. "Never mind, money is hard to earn, but liquor is enjoyable, put up with it," Klagan sighed, directing the clumsy apprentices to start their smithing practice. Clang, clang, clang. Mage Reza was startled by the ringing bell of a visitor, standing up from behind his desk, dizzy and light-headed. Seeing a shadow assassin standing at the door chewing on a piece of foxtail grass, he shook his groggy head and asked, "Is it time for my break yet?" The shadow assassin, with a wild blade of grass in her mouth, shrugged with a somewhat bored expression, "No, it's just that the enslavement scrolls are sold out, and only 2 healing scrolls are left. The priest asked me to urge you to keep at it. Opportunities to make money are right before you, so don't slack off." "Ah, damn it, you might as well kill me," Mage Reza groaned painfully, clutching his head. Seeing the desk piled with scroll materials and bottles of magic ink, he was beginning to regret partnering with these companions to open this magical shop. They truly treated him like a workhorse. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 101-50, Sea Dragon. Chapter 101, Chapter 50, Sea Dragon. The strong centaur warrior Karon, accompanied by the former ogre leader who had awakened the ancient demigod sea demon bloodline, ogre giantess Fafnir, climbed toward the Dragon Nest mountain range from the foot of the mountain. The mountains where the dragon group built their nests are changing daily, with the giant dragons using their powerful abilities to flatten the chosen mountain peaks for spacious activity grounds, almost leveling the mountain peak halfway. On this flattened mountain top, the first castle belonging to the dragon group will be established, serving as the group's council hall and king's castle. The tall ogre slaves, under the direction of several former human noble stonemasons, are processing the stone materials excavated by the giant dragons from the leveled mountaintop. They use newly forged iron chisels, round-headed hammers, and mallets to chip away chunks of stone from the massive stone veins, then meticulously cut those suitable for castle foundations into neat square stones. At present, the mountain-top wide flat area is covered only with flat stone slabs and pervasive dust, making the clanging sounds especially noisy. The earth dragons and reindeer, enslaved and tamed by the dragon's beloved, drag wooden carts loaded with discarded stones up and down the mountain, guided by kobolds and green-skinned goblins. These domesticated animals are relatively docile, with excellent load-bearing capabilities, making them excellent transportation tools within the giant dragon territory. Unfortunately, these ogre slaves were not skilled in excavation and construction, leading to inefficiency. If there were a more construction-proficient race among the dragon group's beloved, the castle construction speed could be significantly faster given enough stone material supplies. However, centaur warrior Karon and ogre giantess Fafnir did not tread this mountain. Instead, they ascended an adjacent peak along a winding and broad mountain path carved by ogre slaves. This peak, close to the red dragon's lair and located at the windward side, remained unaffected, where the giant dragons gathered to rest. Already from halfway up, one could see that the peak belonging to the red dragon was clearly growing taller, with unceasing molten lava flowing and spilling out, blending with dried earthy dust to form new rocks on the red dragon's summit. The flowing lava even spread to mid-mountain, covering the upper half of the peak and forming a mountain body with dark red and grey-brown intermixes. Centaur warrior Karon and ogre giantess Fafnir could feel the steaming heat emanating from it. Even though the centaur warrior now possessed power to challenge a typical young giant dragon after experiencing bloodline radiation, Karon couldn't help but feel awestruck by the giant dragon's unique strength. In his eyes, even many creatures more powerful in strength than the giant dragons would find such feats difficult to accomplish. This was the innate talent of these near-perfect beings, the giant dragons. Fafnir's gaze, water-rippling, also gleamed with brilliance. She had awakened the ancient demigod sea demon bloodline, possessing a soul and spiritual power that ordinary creatures could never reach. Adult giant demons could easily influence adult giant dragons, but even if she grew further, she'd still be far from achieving the impact the red dragon could now exert. "I greet you, my great master. I greet you, great master. Your humble female slave Fafnir extends greetings to all true dragons." Centaur warrior Karon and giant demon Fafnir, upon reaching the mountain top, met the active dragon group. The red dragon was conversing surrounded by other young dragons, the commanding and vigorous dragon body clearly standing out even among the surrounding dragons, overshadowing even the adolescent blue dragon Axi. "It seems the master has grown considerably during this time." Centaur warrior Karon and giant demon Fafnir both harbored this mutual thought as they prostrated on the ground. However, neither harbored any fear, for the beloved of the giant dragons hoped above all for a more powerful master. Furthermore, ogre giantess Fafnir was now more than just a nominal slave of the red dragon. Her soul was controlled by the red dragon, her life linked to the red dragon's hands. She would only wish for the red dragon's strength to grow, for the more she gained from the red dragon's favor. Moreover, being drawn to strength is a nature present in all creatures, not just giant demons but dragons too. Seeing that the centaur warrior and ogre giantess had arrived, Karon nodded, motioning them to wait aside with his gaze, while he looked towards the opposite blue dragon. Blue dragon Das was reporting the investigation findings, with red dragon Kleena nestled beside him. White dragon Gomot and Kamid surrounded his left side, with black dragon Rosani and green dragon Antagena across from him, next to blue dragon Das. Little elf Pick lay on green dragon Antagena's spiny crown, tending to the dragon's scales. The little elf Pick had by now become friends with all the dragons. Even the green dragon, who liked to treat forest elves as food, no longer saw Riven as prey. Instead, they got along well, with little elf Riven no longer fearing the green dragon. However, green dragon Antagena developed a habit of holding the little elf pick in her claws and licking it under the guise of fostering affection. While in the magical world, some races expressed care for the weaker by licking, Karon had found no such behavior in the inherited memories of dragons. Evidently, this behavior didn't exist among dragon species. However, Karon didn't mind. His dragon group was unlike ordinary evil dragons. Although green dragon Antagena still reveled in manipulation and intrigue as a green dragon species, she at least was not malevolent towards her friends. The trench where the Shawa Fishman tribe resides is very deep, about 500 miles from the land. I followed the tracks of the released fishmen and found about hundreds of fishmen still existing in the trench. Blue Dragon Das reported the findings of his and Axe's investigation one by one. On the way back, I also discovered traces of deep-sea Naga. They seem to be in an adversarial relationship with this Shawa Fishman tribe, spying around the Fishman tribe's residence. Perhaps once they realize the Shawa Fishman tribe's main force was eliminated by us, they might attack the Fishman tribe. The young dragons nodded. In the domain of the sea, Shawa Fishman and Naga were mostly in opposition due to the squeezing and collision of living space. Occasionally, they would cooperate, but such partnerships were usually short-lived. Oxy also detected the presence of aquatic dragon auras in the sea, possibly sea emperor dragons. We didn't get too close, lest we were noticed by them. Sea emperor dragons? I'm tempted to see these sea dragons. Black dragon Rosanne's eyes lit up, her tail swayed involuntarily. Sea emperor dragons and black dragons were often natural enemies. Sea emperor dragons hated black dragons, for black dragons were the worst opponents for them. Sea emperor dragons usually live in water, and though they can leave it for a while, doing so is unnecessary. Yet, the black dragons, fond of corrupting and polluting water and charming underwater crawling creatures, are at the top of their hit list. Naturally, all evil dragon species are on Sea Emperor Dragon's target list, with black dragons at the forefront. Black dragons also love to disgust and attack these dragons residing in the sea. Cruel and malevolent black dragons indulge in this, with some even deliberately running into Sea Emperor Dragon's territories to pollute the water, leaving after the deed even if it meant getting beaten numerous times. You were right to do so, Karon commended the blue dragon's caution. The Sea Emperor dragons often ally closely with the bronze dragons, and discovering traces of the Sea Emperor dragons might mean there are nearby one or even a brood of bronze dragons. We still can't concern ourselves with sea territories. Let's put the treasure vault of these Shawa fishmen aside for now. There's no need to take risks for some treasure. Karon gave the young dragons a final conclusion. Our focus should be on the forest, ensuring the protection of the land-clearing citizens and territories so they can plant grains for the dragon group with peace of mind. This will serve as a prosperous granary for the dragon group. Only with sufficient grain can the dragon group expand and consolidate the territory. Otherwise, relying solely on hunting will always limit the dragon group's scale to a certain size. Exceeding a certain scale in dragon group territory would only plunge them into an endless cycle of malicious expansion, which is disadvantageous to our current strategy of steady expansion. Karon gradually felt the pressure surrounding the dragon group territory. In the past, the dragon group's territorial scope wasn't broad, so the monster and other races' power bordered with the territory weren't strong. But now, the dragon group's territory is several times the initial size. Many monsters and tribes nearby are starting to worry about further growth in the giant dragon's power, leading to continuous probing. The contradiction over living space is irreconcilable and might soon lead to conflicts and wars with the giant dragons. The other dragons nodded. They had no objections to the red dragon's decision. Although they wanted to plunder the Shawa fishman's treasure vault, these dragons now wouldn't let their greed land them in danger. Karon withdrew his gaze from his companions and turned towards the centaur warrior and ogre giantess standing by. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 102-51, The Master's Command. Chapter 102, Chapter 51, The Master's Command. Karon looked at the centaur warrior. The naturally indifferent and aloof vertical pupils of the giant dragon held a gentle gaze. Karon. Kali and I have handpicked 200 strong centaur warriors from the centaur tribe, ready to impart them with the heritage of the orthodox centaur tribe, turning them into powerful weapons for the giant dragon territory. I will train them to become the world's most formidable cavalry. This former young king of the orthodox centaur tribe, Karon, a descendant of heroes among centaur legends, named after his great ancestor, bowed and spoke. The current centaur tribe, thanks to a stable living environment and ample food, has seen a significant increase in newborns, with the population growing rapidly. A few years ago, the tribe could barely muster over 200 warriors, but now they can not only allocate a portion to guard the Dragon Nest mountain range but also select 200 warriors as regular trainees. The Dogman's beloved is similar. The Dogman tribe used to split when their population exceeded 1,000 due to food shortages and limited territory. However, under the leadership of Bag, the Dogman tribe became beloved of the Dragon group, and with the assurance of life and adequate food supply, its members nearly number 3,000 now. These kobolds have breeding capabilities comparable to humans and mature much faster. They can reach maturity in just a few years, with 6-year-old kobolds considered adults. These kobolds are now an essential part of the Dragon group territory, with the smartest among them assigned as craftsmen learning various forging techniques, learning from human and dwarf craftsmen how to forge weapons and smelt ores. The strongest serve as hunters and warriors, responsible for hunting and gathering food for the tribe and the dragon's beloved, while the most tenacious are assigned as miners to extract ores and treasures for the giant dragon. Some are placed on the prairie as shepherds for the giant dragon, tasked with domesticating and herding captured animals and beasts like white-horned wild oxen, giant antelope, earth dragons, and reindeer, all of which are relatively docile. Even the weakest kobolds can find work, such as foraging mushrooms and wild vegetables in the forest to supplement food, tending to young members of the tribe, and training captured young beasts. These kobolds understand that their labor aids the collective survival. In Karon's eyes, this makes them more useful than many beloved because of their worship of the dragon and strong collective consciousness. Unlike the lazy and disorganized goblins, who, even under the management and supervision of the Dogman's beloved, can only be used as servants and guards. The nature of their work often leads to errors, hence these green-skinned goblins are considered expendable by dragons and other beloved. No matter where there's a need for manpower, green-skinned goblins can fill the gap, even losses are insignificant. However, these goblins are skilled in digging, so many are now employed by the kobolds to illuminate the dark mines. Although a few goblins are naturally adept at trade with other races, catching Karon's attention, they remain a minority and aren't enough to elevate the status of their entire race. I will have Dwarf Klagan prioritize supplying you with weapons and armor, equipping you with sharp weapons and solid armor. The prairie will be your trial arena. Conquer the weak and seize their territory. Leave opponents you can't deal with to the giant dragon, don't be reckless. The red dragon stood up, its red scales shimmering with beautiful luster in the sunlight. In Karon's mind, these dragon descendants and the centaur tribe are the primary forces under the giant dragon. They will be essential in the future expansion of the dragon group. Centaurs equipped with advanced armor and weapons surpass the cavalry meticulously trained by human kingdoms. This is an innate racial advantage that's difficult to offset. Furthermore, at Karon's suggestion, Karon will teach these centaur warriors the orthodox heritage of the centaur tribe, greatly enhancing their combat capabilities. A company of 200 heavily armored centaur cavalry is capable of defeating foes several times their number, even extraordinary warriors, who will become mere blood under the centaur's iron hooves. Bam! The centaur warrior's large iron fist pounded forcefully onto his chest, eyes glowing with a shimmering belligerence. He lowered his head and said in a deep voice, "I will fight for my master without hesitation. Karon will not let you down. I will always be watching you, the red dragon's massive dragon claw enveloped the head of the centaur warrior. "Go now, and may the glory of the giant dragon be with you." The centaur warrior turned, strode down the mountain peak, the strength in his steps appearing remarkably light. Karon's gaze turned to the ogre giantess lying prone on the ground, revealing an enchanting silhouette. Even in the eyes of the giant dragon, ogre giantess Fafnir was the epitome of allure. Despite wearing simple cloth as a slave, her innate temptation was undeniable. Her skin, white and red tinged, possessed a luster unmatched by even the world's most beautiful jade. Her disproportionately long, jade-like legs and bare feet exuded unimaginable allure, while her full moon-like bosom and ripe peach-like hips aroused a desire to conquer and ravish in every male who saw her. Her face, as crystal clear as jade, bore a sultry beauty, and the inadvertent flirtatious glances from her water-like eyes and the subtle movements of her moist, pink lips always carried an unspoken allure and invitation. This was a natural bewitchment, surpassing any affectation. This allure was irresistible even to other young dragons. However, these young dragons understood that the banshee before them was the private possession of the red dragon, Karon's female slave. Hence, they quickly turned away, avoiding offense or covetous thoughts towards Karon. Only Antagena and Kleena, the two dragonesses, stared intently at the ogre giantess. Their gaze made Fafnir's sensitive spirit feel particularly pressured. Only the curious Pico little elf Riven flitted around the ogre, as elves, too, appreciated beauty. Even Karon, who had seen countless illusory beauties, had to admit that the ogre giantess was a representative of extraordinary allure, yet this did not affect Karon's thoughts. The red dragon lowered its head, looking down at the ogre, trembling unconsciously, causing her hips to ripple like waves. His deep voice stirred up a tide in her ear. "Fafnir, my slave." Upon hearing the red dragon's voice, the ogre giantess Fafnir quickly crawled to the red dragon's feet like a serval pup. Her long, jade-like fingers cradled the dragon claw on the ground, and her pink lips kissed the back of the claw as she spoke. "My master, your female slave Fafnir listens to your will." A trace of amusement flickered in Karon's vertical pupils. Since his initial impression of the ogre giantess wasn't favorable, he did not trust Fafnir. This wasn't because he felt the giantess was difficult to control, it was simply a matter of perception and attitude. Thus, after returning to his territory, Karon hadn't met with Fafnir, continuing to allow the centaur tribe to enslave these ogres as before. However, the ogre giantess Fafnir's keen spirit had observed this issue, which is why she acted so humbly to please, knowing that the red dragon before her could easily control her fate. But now, the dragon group territory lacked talent. Fafnir was smart enough and quite adaptable, something evident from her previous greeting. Karon, the dragon-blooded centaur warrior, influenced by Karon's bloodline, had eyes only for Karon, his patron. Though he respected the other young dragons, he would not hold them in the same reverence as Karon. Fafnir was different. Although she acknowledged herself as Red Dragon's humble slave, she also extended respectful greetings to the other giant dragons. This demonstrated a difference in character and handling of situations. Therefore, Karon decided to involve Fafnir in some territorial management to alleviate the burden on the giant dragon. "I can give you an opportunity, Fafnir, a chance to improve your living conditions." Karon's vertical pupils were filled with rationality and indifference. The giantess, whose allure rivaled that of a succubus, stirred no waves in his eyes, his voice deep and calm. Fafnir quickly kissed the red dragon's claw again, then blinked her watery eyes, gazing up at the dragon's lowered eyes. Her voice, soft as a gentle chant, spoke, "Ah, great master, Fafnir obeys your will, hoping only to gain your favor and praise." "Very well," Karon's rumbling voice echoed in Fafnir's ear as he said, "manage the coastal town for me and the dragon group. I will appoint you as the town's civil servant. Kali will explain your duties. Do not disappoint me, Fafnir." The ogre giantess Fafnir widened her watery eyes, her lush body shivering, creating a dazzling white wave. She hadn't expected to gain significant use as a lowly slave by the Red Dragon. In the gradually establishing territorial order, a civil servant was equivalent to the administrative chief of a town, wielding considerable power. Even the sheriff, beloved by the giant dragon, was under its jurisdiction. She had thought the Red Dragon before her merely sought to play with her body. After all, in the eyes of other races, the Red Dragon had a notorious past in this regard. The entire dragon race was notorious for its evil deeds, willing to take advantage of even the most humble, unintelligent beasts when in heat. Moreover, she knew her charm and temptation. After all, even an ancient demigod sea demon could enchant a divine spirit, albeit the success was not guaranteed. After a long pause, during which her glistening eyes blinked several times, Fafnir came to her senses. Her white forehead bumped against the Red Dragon's claw, and her soft, almost moaning voice spoke. "I obey your command, my lord." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 103-52, Grey Wolf Knights and Centaur Cavalry. Chapter 103, Chapter 52, Grey Wolf Knights and Centaur Cavalry. The sky was spacious and blue, with occasional clusters of white clouds, vast prairie stretching beneath, beasts roaming in all directions. A white dragon spread its wings and flew high overhead, and the gale stirred by its wings shattered the clouds in the sky, the massive dragon casting a swiftly moving shadow upon the ground. Karon, the centaur warrior, led the centaur cavalry galloping across the prairie, seemingly chasing the shadow cast by the dragon above. These robust centaur warriors were each selected as brave and agile warriors from their tribe, with an average height reaching 3 meters, their muscular limbs bulging, showcasing their powerful strength. Led by the dragon-blooded centaur, these warriors trampled the plain with their hooves, their wild and fierce aura causing all the beasts in the grassland to flee in all directions. Even those ferocious creatures of the fierce species would avoid these numerous centaur cavalries from afar. These fierce creatures, beginning to develop intelligence, knew that the well-armored, sharp-weaponed centaurs in front of them could crush them into bloody pulp with just a charge. Scattered around these swiftly galloping centaur warriors were over 100 kobold warriors and green-skinned goblin warriors riding on prairie grey wolves. These relatively strong warriors, carefully selected from their respective tribes, rode the captured and tamed prairie grey wolves, galloping alongside the centaur cavalry all the way. Although these prairie grey wolves were not as fast as the centaur warriors, they excelled in endurance, keeping pace with the centaur warriors. However, these kobold warriors and green-skinned goblins wore only leather armor and tough beast hide, and their weapons were just short bows made from a type of durable wood in the forest, accompanied by a few short-stocked shotguns. "Ha! Stop!" shouted Karon, the centaur warrior in the front, covered with a layer of fine red scales. His sturdy right hand held up a refined iron long spear, slowly pulling to a halt. Following Chiron's rhythm, all the centaur warriors gradually came to a stop within a few steps. These centaur warriors were still in the process of perfecting their coordination and discipline, but their reflexes were quick. Even this degree of coordination would require those elite human cavalry to train for a long time, and this was under the circumstances where these centaur warriors had to familiarize themselves with the commander's orders. Karon stepped forward, finding the massive corpse of a beast lying on the prairie, the corpse of a prairie giant elephant, with long ivory reaching near 2 meters. The gnawed clean bones measured nearly 11 meters from head to tail, and the scattered flesh and bones emitted a fierce aura. This was of the fierce species, even the leader of an elephant herd. Woof woof, chitter chatter. As the centaur cavalry came to a halt, the Grey Wolf Knights following behind also gathered around. Appointed by Karon as the Grey Wolf Knight captain, the kobold clasped its grey wolf's fur, using dragon language and the kobold tongue to communicate with Karon, who was crouched on the ground examining the scene. "Speak in the common tongue," Karon stated sternly. "You kobolds as scout cavalry shouldn't only communicate with the dragon descendant species. In the future, under Lord Karon, there won't just be these species of beloved. There will be more and more other races pledging loyalty to the giant dragon. Every one of you scout cavalry needs to learn the common language. Those who can't should crawl back into the dark caves to mine. Yes, Karon sir, the scout captain Kobold stammered in the common tongue, requesting from the centaur. Next, what should we do next? Take these Grey Wolf Knights and split into teams of 3 to 5 to scout the surrounding area, Karon said gravely. We've already found many giant elephant corpses along the way, and now we find a formidable fierce giant elephant. This is the leader of the elephant herd. Surely there are creatures or tribes more dangerous than this giant elephant nearby. If you find anything, report back immediately. If you encounter danger, shoot a whistle arrow, and I'll rush over at once. This area was already at the edge of the dragon group territory, surrounded by low rolling hills. It's Chiron's first time leading these centaur warriors out for training, so there must be no mistakes. He decided to let the galloping centaur cavalry rest in place to recover their physical strength, to respond to any potential dangers. Yes, Karon sir. The Kobold captain received the order and guided his Grey Wolf in passing the commands among the Grey Wolf Knights, who quickly dispersed in teams of 3 to 5 amid barking mixed with the common tongue. Karon and the other centaur warriors stayed put to rest, as he looked up into the sky. The immense figure of the white dragon loomed above the distant clouds, providing him with some reassurance. Captain, these kobolds and green-skinned goblins may not be reliable. Should we send some more warriors to scout? Kali, leader of the centaur tribe, walked up and asked. The elite warriors selected this time were the strongest batch in the centaur tribe, so centaur leader Kali and her mate, the male centaur Zogo, were also included. All except the centaur maiden Zunaya, who could not leave her post as the town sheriff. Nearly all the formidable warriors were here. For ease of management and command, these outstanding warriors were appointed as squad leaders by Karon. Each squad leader was in charge of 20 knights, with Karon, Zogo, and the centaur tribe's warrior chief Oni each commanding 20 knights. However, this effectively divided the power of the centaur tribe, and over time Chiron's position was bound to replace the original centaur leader Karon. But Karon seemed to have no objections to this. On one hand, these loyal centaur warriors have always regarded the will of the red dragon as a sacred rule, showing no resistance. On the other hand, Karon is also a member of the centaurs, and as the young king of the orthodox centaur tribe, a direct descendant of the once most powerful centaur hero Karon, his lineage is nobler than ordinary centaur warriors. He brought the missing heritage to the centaur tribe here, so he encountered no resistance, but was instead very much supported. No need, as the mightiest warriors, our task is to maintain energy and fight with all our might. Karon shook his head and said, we must learn to utilize and trust other comrades, only then can we unleash the greatest power. After years of war with the Gata Empire, Karon now has some insights of his own. He has begun learning some human training and combat tactics, no longer as chaotic and disorganized as the original tribe. Whistle. A whistle arrow shot up from behind a distant hill, the sharp sound instantly alerting the resting centaurs. Without needing Chiron's reminder, these valiant warriors immediately stood up, gripping their weapons tightly. Let's go, take a look. Karon, the strongest centaur warrior, remained at the forefront of the cavalry line-up. Under his command, 200 centaur cavalry spread out in an attacking triangular wedge formation, charging fiercely towards the location from which the whistle arrow was fired. After a brief rest, the centaur cavalry recovered some physical strength, thus their speed was incredibly fast, trampling with 4 hooves as they quickly crossed the hill. Karon immediately spotted the kobold scouts frantically riding back, originally in groups of 3 or 5, now only 2 lucky Grey Wolf scout knights remained, followed closely by a pack of earth wolves. These creatures, resembling hyenas, weren't particularly large, being even smaller than grey wolves, but their temperament was extremely fierce and cruel. Driven by the Wolf King, this group of 50+ wolves bit fiercely at the rear of the Grey Wolf Knight, attempting to tear the 2 scout knights apart. With a wave of Chiron's sturdy arm, the other centaur cavalry under his command shifted from a triangular wedge formation to a single line, then took out their long bows slung across their waists and backs, aiming at the chasing earth wolf pack. Release! With Chiron's order, these elite divine archers comparable to elves released their bowstrings. Swish! 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 Countless sharp arrows rained down like arrow showers. These iron arrows tore through the air obstruction with a strong whistling sound, piercing effortlessly into the running earth wolves. Remarkably none missed. Each earth wolf had at least 2 sharp arrows embedded in it, with the luckier ones receiving 5 or 6 arrow feathers. These earth wolves mostly had their eyes or ears pierced through by the sharp arrows, collapsing onto the ground without uttering a single scream, only the strong leader hiding at the back of the pack emitting a low wail amidst the earth wolf corpses. Karon sprinted out from the troops, bringing back the earth wolf leader still holding onto a breath, tossing it at Chiron's feet. Bang! The sharp arrow in the earth wolf leader's head smashed onto the ground, instantly piercing its ears, silencing its low wail, and with a twitch of its limbs, it immediately expired. However, the rope-made collar on the earth wolf leader's neck drew Chiron's attention. He bent down, snapping the collar off the earth wolf's neck, inspected it carefully, and sniffed it. A peculiar stench rushed into his nose, making Karon frown. These earth wolves are enslaved by other creatures, judging by the collar on their necks, it should be a humanoid race, Karon also concluded. Karon nodded, saying, "This rotten smell, it might be a giant demon and jackal wolf man, or perhaps a half-beastman and ogre. From the traces on this earth wolf's body, there should be a caster within this race, we need to be careful." "Shall we find their lair now and launch a direct attack?" asked the robust centaur warrior Zogo as he stepped forward. "These centaur warriors are belligerent, pursuing bloodshed and indulgence." Karon looked up at the gradually slanted sunset, shook his head, and said, "Night is about to fall, which is unfavorable for us centaur warriors. The dark night makes powerful centaur warriors lose grip, and our bows and arrows can't maximize their advantage. We'll come back tomorrow directly, but leave some Grey Wolf scout knights to monitor and observe from afar." Zogo nodded. These warriors have become accustomed to obeying the leader's orders, a necessary rule for survival in the wilderness. "By the way, bring these earth wolf corpses back. Their pelts can be stripped to make winter clothes, or sell them to humans in the towns. Although we don't like eating these foul creatures, those green-skinned goblins don't care." Centaur warrior Karon ordered his cavalry to collect all the earth wolf corpses, knowing well how to cherish food from his time managing the dragon's beloved. Although centaurs relish in pleasure and indulgence, they never waste. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 104-53, The Proactive Black Dragon Rosani. Chapter 104, Chapter 53, The Proactive Black Dragon Rosani. Karon led the leader of the Grey Wolf Knights up the wide stone steps carved out by ogre slaves. The high stone steps forced the tiny kobolds to use both hands and feet, occasionally needing the strong centaurs to help them up by 2 steps to barely keep pace with the centaur's stride. In the world of giant dragons, everything advocates grandeur and beauty, even the stone steps for climbing the mountain are expansive and tall. This seemingly modest peak can deter ordinary people just by its ladder. Upon reaching the peak, the tiny Grey Wolf Knight leader was already crawling along the ground, but this showcased the kobold's reverence for the giant dragon. However, Karon did not see the figure of the red dragon. On this platform where the dragon group gathered for rest, only several young dragons were crouched playing a card game made of stone slabs. Little elf Riven was still sitting on the green dragon's crown, exclaiming loudly and directing the green dragon to play cards. "Hey, Karon, why are you here again?" asked white dragon Kamid, who was seated opposite Karon. He did not carry the arrogance and condescension common to giant dragons. The rest of the young dragons stopped and turned their heads to look at the centaur warrior and the Grey Wolf Knight lying on the ground, not daring to breathe loudly. Giant dragons respect strength, Dragon-blooded centaur Karon and dragon-descendant werewolf Saha are the most powerful beloved under the dragon group, earning them relatively polite treatment from these young dragons. Lord Kamid, noble true dragons, Karon bowed in salute to the giant dragons. In Chiron's heart, Karon's status far surpassed these young giant dragons, but before giant dragons, dragon descendants should remain humble, and he wouldn't develop a rebellious heart because of his own power. I come to report some findings from the past few days that require decisions from the giant dragons, Karon stated solemnly. Karon is still asleep, I will go wake him. Kamid stood up. In this white dragon's heart, Red Dragon was like his external brain. The first thing he would want to do was notify the Red Dragon. It's the same reporting this to the true dragons, there's no need to trouble Lord Kamid, besides, don't disturb the sleeping dragon. The centaur warrior didn't want to interrupt the Red Dragon's rest. With his deeply trusted status by the giant dragons, he could actually directly climb the Red Dragon's peak. Speak, Karon, what is the matter? Blue Dragon Das had been quietly observing the centaur warrior's reaction and suddenly spoke. Karon recounted the situation he encountered at the edge of the giant dragon territory, then pointed to the kobold leader lying on the ground, afraid to move, and said, "These Grey Wolf Night Scouts guarded there for 2 nights before discovering some signs." "Woof, woof," barked the dogman knight twice before successfully switching to the gradually familiar common language. "Noble true dragons, we watched over the night twice and finally discovered that beneath those low hills lay the lairs of the Jackal Wolfman. These Jackal Wolfmen hollowed out the continuous hills to build interconnected tunnels underground. There are many Jackal Wolfmen. We used our fingers and toes, but couldn't count them all. There are lots, and many more are hiding inside the caves without coming out. We also saw some bear goblins, woof woof." The dogman knight concluded with 2 barks in transformed dragon language. Blue Dragon Das's pupils flashed with the light of wisdom. He said to the centaur warrior, "Such a scale of Jackal Wolfman tribe, they must have some Jackal Wolfman mages. Do not underestimate them. Go ahead, I allow you to start the attack, the giant dragons will be behind you, defeat and capture these Jackal Wolfmen, trample those who dare resist into bloody mud." "Yes, Lord Das," Centaur Karon came precisely for this. He received permission from the giant dragons to conquer and walked away, carrying the kobold whose limbs were sore. "Should we inform Karon about this, Das? Maybe Karon will get upset once he knows. After all," he said, "the current focus is the forest." Black Dragon Rosani stretched his long neck, gazing at the eternally restless, steaming red-brown peak. Blue Dragon Das shook his head, just about to speak when a crisp voice sounded. "Karon will not be upset by this, he will only be happy." Green Dragon Antagena looked at Black Dragon Rosani with disdain, arrogantly saying, "You idiot, Karon has always allocated matters in the territory to each of us, he never cares about the division of his power, he only hopes we can grow. Keep being this foolish, Rosani, and you will be left far behind us. Then you'll just be a drag in the dragon group." Besides, Karon only said the forest is the focus of the dragon group, he never explicitly stated not to expand on the plains. "We just need to act cautiously and avoid making mistakes." "You damned Antagena, are you looking for a fight?" Black Dragon Rosani's dark cheeks almost turned the color of a red dragon. He rose with anger, baring his teeth and claws towards the green dragon. White Dragon Gomot swung his tail indifferently, watching the drama unfolding before him without a word. Such things are not uncommon among the 5-color dragon group. Even in this different dragon group, the nature of these young 5-color dragons still persists and has not weakened, they merely have a little something extra compared to other 5-color dragons, rather than lacking anything. However, he didn't hold high hopes for Black Dragon Rosani. Among the 5-color dragons, although green dragons are not very strong, they can steadily suppress black dragons and white dragons. Of course, the ancestral path-treading white dragon Gomot cannot be judged by ordinary white dragon standards. In the past, Black Dragon Rosani had not been beaten by green dragons a few times, it seems he was only angry momentarily, not truly looking for a beating. Sure enough, Green Dragon Antagena also understood that Black Dragon Rosani was merely bluffing, merely lazily staring at the Black Dragon with disdainful eyes, swinging her tail. A good male dragon doesn't fight with a female dragon, sulked Black Dragon Rosani, retracting his snarling face and sitting back down, uttering a proverb learned from the Red Dragon. How boring, why didn't you fight, Rosani, aren't you afraid of losing to Antagena? Go teach Antagena a lesson, I want to see blood flowing, yawned female Red Dragon Kleena. Karon was currently lying idle in his volcano nest, unable to soak in the magma lake, making her very displeased. The Red Dragon's belligerent nature made her eager to stir up trouble. Karon said that instead of using strength for internal dragon group fights, it's better used for external battles, scoffed Black Dragon Rosani, standing up and glaring at Kleena. I'm going to check on Karon and the others, doing things for the dragon group. Unlike you, I am very proactive. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlov.com. Chapter 105-54, The Beginning of Conquest. Chapter 105, Chapter 54, The Beginning of Conquest. The Black Dragon Rosani curled up like a big cat, hugging its legs, with its wide wings pressed tightly against its body. Its luminous vertical pupils stared at the distant low hills, trying its best to conceal its body within the low shrubs on the grasslands. The bright night was like water, blanketing the prairie. The river cutting through the grasslands shimmered with moonlight, like a celestial river of stars. The sound of the flowing water concealed the slight agitation of the centaur warriors, who were eagerly awaiting the appearance of prey. These jackal wolf men preferred to be active at night, always hiding in caves under the hills during the day. This habit made it difficult even for a giant dragon flying overhead to spot their traces. Even if the giant dragon discovered these jackal wolf men, it couldn't do much, as it wasn't feasible for the dragon to dig through each hill to drag out and dispose of the jackal wolf men. It could only be said that every race surviving in the wilderness had its unique survival tactics. The tall bodies of the centaur warriors were not suited for combat in such terrain. Sending the slender kobolds and goblin warriors into the caves would simply serve as a snack and equip these ferocious jackal wolf men. These jackal wolf men loved to eat these intelligent creatures, reveling in the final wails and screams of their prey. Their brutality rivaled that of the red dragon. The centaur warriors had once considered using fire attacks, piling wood and animal dung from the grasslands in front of the jackal wolf men's caves, and using dense smoke to force them out before resolving them. However, after careful observation, the centaur warriors discovered that this stretch of hills had more than just 2 or 3 cave exits. Perhaps all the hills in this area had been connected by these cunning jackal wolf men, making a fire attack infeasible. Thus, Karon chose to launch an attack at night. Nighttime was the home field of the jackal wolf men, but Karon wisely chose to act on this particularly bright night. The skies were starry, and moonlight was like water, allowing even ordinary people to clearly see everything on the prairie. Let alone these strong centaur warriors, they wouldn't lose their advantage. The Black Dragon Rosani and these dragons beloved didn't have to wait long. In the bright moonlight, jackal wolf men began to appear one after another in the hills, along with packs of earth wolves enslaved by the jackal wolf men, and quite a few giant demons and bear goblins. The adult jackal wolf men were mostly over 2 meters tall and weighed nearly 300 pounds based on their size, with heads resembling the earth wolves they tamed. The skin exposed outside the beast hide wrapping was green-gray or dark green, mostly covered with dirty dark yellow or gray-red manes. Their heads resembled hyenas of the plains exactly, with yellow teeth and blood-red or bluish-white eyes. The Black Dragon Rosani and Centaur warrior Karon quietly poked their heads out of the low bushes to look. They were not like those stupid kobolds, they knew how to accurately estimate the number of jackal wolf men. Over 400 jackal wolf men. After observing for a while, the Black Dragon Rosani said, "But I haven't seen any jackal wolf men mages, they must still be inside the caves." Judging from the number of jackal wolf men coming out to hunt, the tribe must have at least over 1,000 members, Lord Rosani, Karon said, pointing at the now active Jackal Wolfmen in the distance. At the forefront are the strongest Jackal Wolfman barbarian soldiers with bone chain armor and great hammers, and those riding the earth wolves are the slender Jackal Wolfman scout trackers and sentinels with wooden bows. Their leaders and casters haven't moved out. It seems that this area is dominated by these Jackal Wolfmen. Even though facing potentially several times their number of enemies, these centaur warriors showed no fear. The former ogre tribe was stronger than the centaurs, but they still fought them for nearly over a decade. Moreover, now these centaur warriors had upgraded their equipment from bone arrowheads and wooden spears to ironware and leather armor. If it weren't for the limited production capacity of the territory, Karon would have wanted these centaur warriors to don heavy armor. "Can you handle these Jackal Wolfmen?" the black dragon Rosani asked, turning back. "Dealing with these Jackal Wolfmen is not difficult, but if it draws out the reinforcements hiding in the caves, the warriors will certainly have to bleed," Karon replied. "Fighting for the dragon is the honor and duty of the dragon's beloved," declared the centaur leader Kali without hesitation. This was also her heartfelt feeling. Perhaps these centaur warriors were currently the most loyal warriors among the beloved to the dragons. Although kobolds pledged allegiance to the dragons, they were also prone to fleeing when faced with disadvantages or life-threatening situations. It was a trait of their race, just like kobolds were naturally the lapdogs of dragons and difficult to change. As for the green-skinned goblins, they were even lower than the kobolds. Without the supervision of the kobolds, they might run at the first sign of real war, not really a ragtag group, but not much different from scattered soldiers. No warrior grows strong without bloodshed, only through the baptism of blood can these riders grow into invincible warriors, Karon agreed with Kali's words. The black dragon Rosani swept its gaze over the determined centaur warriors behind it and issued the order. "Go, don't let the dragon's expectations down. Let me see if your bravery is worthy of Karon's regard. When you draw out the Jackal Wolfmen's reinforcements, I'll look for an opportunity to cut off their retreat back to the lair." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlov.com. Chapter 106-54, The Beginning of Conquest, Part 2. Chapter 106, Chapter 54, The Beginning of Conquest, Part 2. Karon received the order and left, taking his centaur warriors and the dogman and goblin who were covering the grey wolf's mouth, quietly following the Jackal Wolfman pack that was already heading into the distance. To avoid being discovered by the keen sense of smell of the Jackal Wolfmen, the centaur cavalry tracked against the wind, trailing far behind the Jackal Wolfman pack. Along the way, they saw the Jackal Wolfmen chasing prey but did not take action until they were far from the hilly area. It was then that the leading Karon instructed his warriors. "You Grey Wolf cavalry spread out to block those Jackal Wolfmen who might escape, the rest of the centaurs come with me to kill these Jackal Wolfmen, but leave some alive to send out a call for reinforcements, so as not to disrupt my plan to catch them all in one sweep." "Yes," answered the Centaur Knights and Grey Wolf Knights in unison, and a heavy killing intent immediately rose on the tranquil moonlit grassland. "Attack!" Centaur Karon waved the black iron long spear in his hand, pointing at the Jackal Wolfmen enraptured in slaughtering their prey, his forehooves gradually speeding up. The dogmen and green-skinned goblins riding the grey wolves also waved their short spears, screeching as they spread out to block the retreat of the Jackal Wolfmen. Rumble! 200 formidable Centaur Knights spread out in an attack formation, their forehooves trampling the grassland, uprooting turf, and charging forward like a torrent of a mountain flood, unstoppable. This commotion stirred countless ripples on the tranquil grassland, disturbing numerous creatures hidden in the grass and low bushes, fleeing from their hiding places. The Jackal Wolfmen also noticed the centaur warriors charging madly at them, but they thought their numbers gave them an advantage and were unafraid. Jackal Wolfmen are inclined to attack when they have a numerical advantage, using a sea of people strategy and their strong power to overwhelm opponents. So these Jackal Wolfmen instead felt that tonight's prey was secured, their brutal and bloodthirsty nature lighting up their beastly eyes, and under the lead of the Jackal-Wolf-Man barbarian captain, they charged at the Centaur Knights. "Kill these centaurs, feast tonight, and suck their blood and bone marrow." The Jackal-Wolf-Man barbarian leader waved his heavy double-headed flail, driving his Jackal-Wolf-men to attack. The giants and bear goblins in the ranks also brandished their big sticks, howling and charging up. These creatures are allies of the Jackal-Wolf-men when numbers are equal, but become their slaves and reserve food when outnumbered. Driven by the Jackal-Wolf-men, these creatures also unleashed their ferocity. Boom! The two sides collided. The strong centaur Chiron's entire body surged with a faint radiance, his muscles swelled, and the fine dragon scales covering him expanded along with the bursting muscles, resembling a scale explosion. "I'll kill you!" The tall Jackal-Wolf-Man barbarian wielded a bone staff crafted from the thigh bone of an unknown creature and lunged forward. With tremendous power, this Jackal-Wolf-Man easily leaped to the height of the centaur, the bone staff whistling through the air to crush the centaur's skull. Karon was fearless, his robust arm flowing with radiance enveloping the thick iron spear, and the unstoppable sharpness directly pierced through the pouncing Jackal-Wolf-Man barbarian. The radiance on the long spear surged instantly, exploding the Jackal-Wolf-Man hanging on the long spear from the chest to abdomen, splitting his body in two, and the weapon that was swinging lost its power support, falling to the ground. "Kill all of you!" The remaining Jackal-Wolf-men also lunged at the sides of the centaur formation, their not much weaker bodies bursting with powerful force, aiming to kill the centaurs. On Chiron's flanks, Kali and Zogo had also inherited the centaur heritage. Although the time was short, they were much stronger than before. They gripped the long spear tightly, charging with formidable force combined with running momentum, making the long spear an incredibly terrifying weapon. Splash! The long spear in Kali's hand swung, knocking down the giant's bone staff. The long spear swept past the giant's body and rushed on. The giant cried out, clutched the slash on his neck with both hands, but was quickly impaled by the centaur warrior's long spear behind Kali. The long iron spear in Zogo's hand was more like a long rod, swinging in his robust arm, smashing the head of a bear goblin, from which red and white sauce spilled out. The bear goblin, with its sufficient life force, was not yet dead, gasping on the ground, but was then trampled by the cavalry behind, turning into meat paste and blood mud. These centaur knights easily pierced through the Jackal-Wolf-men wearing beast hides with their long spears, skewering them as if they were wild fruits, then sliding the spear tips to shake off the Jackal-Wolf-men's corpses, continuing to charge forward. In an instant, the clash between Jackal-Wolf-men and centaurs created a bloody battlefield on the green grassland, countless splattered blood and flesh staining the ground below. Most of it was the blood and flesh of Jackal-Wolf-men. Only a few unfortunate centaurs became the target of several Jackal-Wolf-men and were injured. The cavalry's impact and speed made it difficult for the Jackal-Wolf-men to take a bite. Under the leadership of the mighty Karon and several other centaur warriors, the centaur cavalry easily pierced through the Jackal-Wolf-man formation. Even those stout Jackal-Wolf-man barbarians could not resist this cavalry assault. With just one simple round of charging, nearly half of these Jackal-Wolf-men were dead, and the leader of the Jackal-Wolf-man barbarians, seeing the centaur cavalry that pierced straight through their own formation, was immediately terrified, tail tucked. "Run quickly, these centaurs' weapons are too formidable, we must return to tell the chief." Immediately, it howled, ordering the remaining Jackal-Wolf-men to scatter and flee, mixing with the escaping Jackal-Wolf-men heading towards the hilly nest. The Jackal-Wolf-men running for their lives while shouting loudly at the top of their lungs. "Howl woo!" This was a signal for help and warning. The rest of the Jackal-Wolf-men also howled, and for a time the grassland was filled with cacophony akin to the howls of earth wolves. But death was close on their heels. The centaur cavalry that broke through the Jackal-Wolf-man formation regrouped and redirected under Chiron's adjustment. They weren't like those human cavalry needing to adjust their horses, they were more united with their mounts, so they regrouped far quicker than human cavalry. The centaur cavalry followed the Jackal-Wolf-men, gazing at their prey like the Grim Reaper, waiting until the Jackal-Wolf-men were about to approach the hills. The call for backup was enough to be transmitted. before launching their charge again. And in front of the Jackal Wolfmen, they could no longer care about the centaur cavalry behind, because facing them were the dogmen knights and goblins who excelled at fighting favorable winds. These two creatures were more vicious and brutal than any race when fighting favorable winds, also enjoying tormenting their opponents more. These goblins and dogmen rode grey wolves twice their size, cunningly maneuvering around, recklessly shooting short bows and spears, filling the limbs of these jackal wolfmen with arrow feathers and short spears. Previously weakling scum in the eyes of jackal wolfmen, easily crushed with one hand, became deadly killers, one by one jackal wolfmen falling dead on their way home. The blood illuminated this path across the grassland, their eyes wide looking at the bright moon above, the remaining light in their eyes filled with resentment and humiliation, dying at the hands of these green-skinned goblins and dogmen. They could not rest in peace. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlov.com. Chapter 107-55, Jackal Wolfman Yugu. Chapter 107, Chapter 55, Jackal Wolfman Yugu. Inside the underground cave of the hills, unexpectedly to outsiders, the cave had been dug wide and tall, and did not appear crowded at all. Some torches soaked in animal grease were inserted in the grooves of the cave walls, burning fiercely. Some fires made of dry grass mixed with animal dung from the prairie also provided light for the spacious and open underground lair. Even so, parts of the entire cave still appeared dim. A frail jackal wolfman sentinel hurriedly passed through the dim cave passage, bypassed the jackal wolfmen and giant demons crowded by the fireside, passed by the cave where dragon beasts were kept, and then passed by the rooms separately opened for those jackal wolfman mages, finally reaching a high chamber. This chamber was extremely wide and tall, even a giant dragon could easily fit inside. Over a dozen broad and long passages connected to here. The walls and domed ceiling were painted with murals using the blood of various beasts and bizarre pigments. It depicted a tall jackal wolfman clad in exquisite scale armor, wielding a refined gold three-headed flail, battling various monsters, featuring prominently a gigantic minotaur demon with golden mane, brandishing a long-handled heavy blade. This is the guardian deity worshipped by the Jackal Wolfman, king of Jackal Wolfman Yunagu. According to rumors, Yunagu is a lord from the bottomless abyss, possessing great power and is the ancestor and guardian deity of all Jackal Wolfmen in the world. However, although most Jackal Wolfmen revered king of Jackal Wolfman Yunagu, they did not regard Yunagu as a god, just as a mighty Jackal Wolfman warrior and ancestor. Some arrogant Jackal Wolfmen even aimed to overthrow king of Jackal Wolfman Yunagu. The gold-maned minotaur demon, wielding a long-handled heavy blade, being opposed to king of Jackal Wolfman Yunagu, is king of minotaurs Baphomet, his adversary and nemesis. This masculine, cruel, and fierce king of minotaurs is also a lord from the bottomless abyss in legends, renowned with notable titles such as Horned Demon or Master of Horns, as well as Lord of Beasts. He is the idol of evil rangers and barbarians, and the god of faith for minotaurs. He loathes king of Jackal Wolfman and all Jackal Wolfmen, killing every Jackal Wolfman he encounters. Under these grand dome murals, on a wide stone chair, sat a dozing Jackal Wolfman. Among the Jackal Wolfman race, even the strongest Jackal Wolfman barbarian soldiers were only about 2.5 meters tall, while this Jackal Wolfman stood over 3 meters, nearly reaching 4 meters. His blood-red mane softly draped behind his head, and his grey-red short snout did not have the slobber most Jackal Wolfmen had, and the grey-red fur on his body appeared particularly clean, without the unique putrid scent carried by other Jackal Wolfmen. This was a clean and powerful Jackal Wolfman. This Jackal Wolfman called himself Yugu, born stronger than other Jackal Wolfman cubs, was the leader of the new generation of Jackal Wolfmen, so he was very ambitious from a young age. After reaching adulthood and single-handedly hunting a dragon lizard, said to have giant dragon bloodline, he gained the allegiance of the vast majority of the Jackal Wolfman tribe. This aroused the vigilance of the previous generation's Jackal Wolfman leader, but Yugu openly challenged the thriving leader at a Jackal Wolfman gathering, and with bare hands, easily killed the previous generation's Jackal Wolfman leader, hence becoming the leader of the Jackal Wolfman tribe. Under his leadership, the Jackal Wolfman moved to this hilly area, which originally belonged to the lair of the dragon lizard he killed. With a stable lair, the Jackal Wolfman no longer wandered like wild dogs on the prairie. With abundant food supplies, the Jackal Wolfman tribe rapidly expanded, growing from a tribe of merely 200 members to a large tribe with over 1,000 members. Not only do they possess many Jackal Wolfman mages, they have also enslaved numerous members of other races, such as giant demons, half-beastmen, earth goblins, and bear goblins, captured and tamed many dragon beasts and brutal species, along with numerous animals and beasts from the prairie. The current Jackal Wolfman tribe has become the ruler of this area under his development. Hence, the Jackal Wolfman scouts did not dare to disturb loudly, stopping at the cave passage entrance, where two strong Jackal Wolfman barbarian soldiers stood guard. Each passage had two Jackal Wolfman barbarian soldiers acting as guards, protecting the king of this tribe. After a low report from the Jackal Wolfman barbarian soldiers, Jackal Wolfman Yugu opened his eyes. Even under the blaze of countless torches within the cave, his blood-red eyes still emitted their unique glow. What happened? Yugu's coarse and hoarse voice echoed in the cave. Leader, the hunting party sent a distress signal just now, seemed to have encountered an irresistible danger, and now we can no longer hear their voices. They might have all been killed. The Jackal Wolfman sentinel knelt on the ground, utterly humble in front of Yugu's powerful presence. What? Even several hundred strong Jackal Wolfmen can encounter unstoppable danger. What kind of enemy did they encounter? Discontent shone on Yugu's face, resembling a hyena, furrowing his brow. In Yugu's impression, on the prairie ruling this area, no creatures could resist the power of his warriors, and he had been quite restrained. He hadn't occupied the territory of those brutal species near the dragon group territory, and these Jackal Wolfmen didn't know those brutal species lands had already been occupied by the giant dragon's subordinates, and the giant dragons never risked flying beyond their territory range, so Yugu was unaware of the current situation. Not clear, but recently some scouts reported clusters of centaurs appearing nearby. It's possible these centaurs clashed with our hunting party. The Jackal Wolfman sentinel answered, bowing his head. Centaurs. Yugu murmured, in his memory, although centaurs were strong warriors, for his Jackal Wolfman barbarian soldiers to feel threatened, it should be a significant number, a powerful centaur tribe. Go gather the warriors and casters in the tribe, take up their weapons, and bring those dragon beasts. I want to see what strength these centaurs possess, daring to offend the Jackal Wolfman's territory. Yugu stood up, his towering body draped in blood-red fur, a three-headed flail on the left side of the stone seat glinting brightly. Restless sounds echoed from every corner of the cave. Numerous Jackal Wolfmen picked up their weapons gathering, then swarming out of their lair, awaiting their leader on the prairie. The casters with special status in the Jackal Wolfman tribe, adorned with their purple mane, remained quietly waiting outside the cave. Clearly, Yugu's status within the Jackal Wolfman was supreme, with absolute authority. Jackal Wolfman Yugu finally stepped out of the cave, yet his towering figure rode on top of a dragon beast. This creature, covered in rough hair, with hind claws growing scythe-like bone blades, was over 6 meters long, resembling a dinosaur. This is an Achilles dragon, said to have the bloodline of a giant dragon, a fierce predator on the prairie, a strong creature at the top of the ordinary food chain. Yet, this enormous, powerful dragon beast was tamed by Jackal Wolfman Yugu into a war beast and pet. One can imagine the power this Jackal Wolfman held. Jackal Wolfman Yugu swung the heavy three-headed flail, loudly shouting, "Advance, follow me to kill those invaders daring to trespass Jackal Wolfman territory, drink their blood, and decorate our lair with their bones." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 108-56, Ashes and Allegiance, Double Length. Chapter 108, Chapter 56, Ashes and Allegiance, Double Length. Rumble, the robust body of the jackal wolfman leader Yugu rode atop the massive Achilles dragon beast across the hilly grasslands, his blood-red long mane fluttering like a wind-blown cloak. The enormous three-headed refined gold flail swung like a toy in his muscular arms, rippling with the rhythm of the run, as the dragon beast's massive body stomped enormous footsteps on the solid, heavy ground, leaving dust flying over the lush green grass of the plains behind him, followed by orderly and distinct jackal wolfmen. On either side of jackal wolfman leader Yugu were jackal wolfman barbarian soldiers also mounted on dragon beasts and earth wolves. These jackal wolfman barbarian soldiers were the most formidable warriors of the jackal wolfman tribe. These jackal wolfman barbarian soldiers were all about 2.5 meters in height, wielding heavy flails and great hammers, and they formed the protective guard corps for the ambitious leader. They were the most trustworthy warriors of the jackal wolfman leader. Usually, they were also the strike force of the jackal wolfman tribe. Their armor was the finest in the tribe. Many wore beast hide garments made of the resilient leather of dragon beasts or the toughest pelts from ferocious creatures hunted by jackal wolfmen. Following the jackal wolfman barbarian soldiers were jackal wolfman mages, also known as watchers, mounted on earth wolves. These jackal wolfmen, though relatively lean, bore unique purple manes and were naturally endowed with magic that brought many outlander druids and shaman priests to tears. Even these jackal wolfman mages themselves found it difficult to ascertain the source of their power, nor could they distinguish whether their strength stemmed from magic abilities or divine art. Typically, they avoided wearing extra armor to prevent interference with their spell-casting abilities. These jackal wolfman mages would generally enhance the bodies of jackal wolfman warriors using their magic abilities under protection, but could also directly strike enemies with magic. Moreover, they possessed spell-like abilities similar to fear auras, gradually inciting fear in the hearts of nearby enemies. Some night crows and scavenging vultures over the plains fluttered around above these jackal wolfman mages, loudly cawing. They were enslaved reconnaissance birds by magical means, allowing the jackal wolfman to see the surrounding view through these birds' eyes. Dozens upon hundreds of the slimmest jackal wolfman scouts spread far and wide on earth wolves, these jackal wolfmen being intelligent scouts, dangerous assassins, and ranged soldiers. Their stature rarely exceeded 2 meters, and they carried weapons smeared with poison, bows, and blowguns. Trailing behind were the majority of ordinary jackal wolfman warriors and giant demon bear goblin slaves. These jackal wolfman warriors and slaves could only run on foot, but their strong bodies made them run no slower than most beasts across the grasslands. Though still scattered in formation, these jackal wolfmen clearly had more defined roles compared to previous hunting tribes. If such a loosely structured species had a particularly strong leader, they could unite and fight with clear roles, exhibiting a discipline that typical monster species lacked. Evidently, jackal wolfman leader Yugu was such a powerful tribal leader. Ga, ga, ga. A bald vulture about 2 meters in length flapped its slightly bald wings and perched on the arm of a jackal wolfman mage, whose slightly cloudy pupils returned to a blood-red hue. Leader, my bird has already found the bodies left by dead warriors, just a short run ahead to the left. A jackal wolfman mage urged his seated earth wolf leader to catch up with the Achilles dragon's pace, reporting to his leader. These jackal wolfmen possessed their own language, but could also speak giant demon, half-beastman, or goblin language, and some common tongues. In actuality, jackal wolfmen belonged to a quite intelligent species. Additionally, their advantage was not only significant in language acquisition, but in other aspects as well. The main obstacle hindering further evolution of the jackal wolfmen was their loose social structure. Under proper guidance, these jackal wolfmen might develop into an unexpectedly formidable force. What about those centaur invaders? No trace of them discovered. Jackal wolfman leader Yugu said. Riding atop the running dragon beast, the bumps and jolts did not affect the steadiness of his voice, though his brow furrowed slightly. No trace of those centaurs found. Perhaps they saw the signal for help from the warriors and realized they couldn't resist our retaliation, so they fled. Those cowardly and vile centaurs. responded the Jackal Wolfman mage, tearing off a piece of jerky to feed the bald vulture perched on his arm. The vulture swallowed the long piece of jerky in a single gulp, flapping its wings and soaring again into the sky. After running approximately a few leagues further, Jackal Wolfman leader Yugu's excellent vision could already spot the blood-stained markings on the grassland. A pungent unique jackal wolf stench mingled with the smell of blood entered his keen nose, prompting the Jackal Wolfman leader Yugu to swing the three-headed flail in his hand, unleashing a fierce sound. He loudly commanded, "All warriors, halt! Watchers, send your pets to fly into the sky and survey the surroundings. The rest of the warriors, search the ground, see if there are any surviving warriors, and look for traces of those centaurs." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 109-56, Ashes and Allegiance, double, _2. Chapter 109, Chapter 56, Ashes and Allegiance, double chapter, _2. The large troop of over 600 Jackal Wolfmen stopped immediately. Although there was still some commotion, incomparable to those trained human soldiers, they maintained a noticeable level of discipline. The night crow vultures enslaved by the Jackal Wolfman mages scattered in all directions to scout the sky, while the Jackal Wolfman scouts riding earth wolves also dispersed, heading for the low jungles and burrows on the prairie. These Jackal Wolfmen were familiar with every region of their territory, and nighttime was their domain. The remaining Jackal Wolfman warriors also spread out, using their keen sense of smell to capture the traces and scent left by the centaur warriors on the prairie. Only the Jackal Wolfman barbarian soldiers and these Jackal Wolfman mages surrounded the Jackal Wolfman leader Yugu, observing the battlefield situation. The Jackal Wolfman leader jumped off the tall Achilles dragon beast, his tall, sturdy body dragging the heavy three-headed flail as he traversed the remnants of the battlefield, his blood-red eyes searching for every detail left behind. Hiss, hiss. Jackal Wolfman leader Yugu looked at the bodies of the Jackal Wolfman warriors lying in pools of blood along the way, while using his keen nose to sniff out the air's scent, discerning information about the enemy. "There's the scent of grey wolves on the prairie, and the stench emanating from those green-skinned goblins. This smell should belong to the stench of kobolds," Jackal Wolfman leader Yugu analyzed in his mind. Grey wolves were everywhere, and wolf packs often became prey and vent partners for Jackal Wolfmen. Both green-skinned goblins and kobolds were everywhere. The Jackal Wolfmen had slaughtered no fewer than a dozen tribes of green-skinned goblins and kobolds, so Jackal Wolfman leader Yugu was very familiar with these smells. The strongest foul sweat smell must be from those centaurs. It seems these enemies might have allied together, or they have become the beloved of some powerful creature. Most likely those annoying five-color dragons. Metal dragons wouldn't like to accept weak, lowly races like kobolds and green-skinned goblins. Damn it, when did a giant dragon appear? I hope it's not an adult giant dragon, otherwise, the tribe would have to migrate. Jackal Wolfman leader Yugu was an ambitious guy. Even though these evil races enjoyed clinging to giant dragons, Yugu, deep down, didn't want to lose his power and position. "Leader, we've found the traces of those centaurs escaping. Should we follow these tracks and kill all these centaurs?" The thin Jackal Wolfman scout riding an earth wolf ran over, pulling the earth wolf's ears, jumping off its back, then kneeling to report, pointing in the direction of the centaur's escape. Jackal Wolfman leader Yugu looked towards the direction indicated by the scout. He knew very well that in that direction, adjacent to the Jackal Wolfmen's territory, was a powerful beastman tribe. He had quietly investigated it at night, and among them were many strong ones, with some even able to rival him in strength. He always ordered the Jackal Wolfman tribe not to cross the borders of their territory to avoid conflicts with those beastman tribes. Although he did not fear those beastmen, the current Jackal Wolfman tribe was not enough to contend with the beastman tribe. Could it be that those beastman tribes are no longer satisfied with their territory and have allied with the centaur tribe? With the ability of these beastmen, it's quite normal for them to enslave those weak goblins and kobolds. Jackal Wolfman leader Yugu's mind flashed some thoughts while shaking his head. No need to chase. Leave some Jackal Wolfman sentinels to patrol the edges of the territory, and also leave a few watchers here to maintain contact. The rest of the Jackal Wolfman warriors follow me back. Now is not the time to clash with those reckless beastmen. We need to continue accumulating strength. He finished speaking, mounted the Achilles dragon beast gnawing on the Jackal Wolfman corpses on the ground beside him, whistled orders, gathered his Jackal Wolfman subordinates, and led his tribe back to their lair. On the leeward side of the hilltops that belonged to the Jackal Wolfman lair, Centaur warriors and Grey Wolf knights, who had quietly arrived here, were already hiding, silently waiting for the returning reinforcements of the Jackal Wolfmen when they were off guard. Karon had learned how to utilize his advantages from the war with the human kingdom. He made full use of the flexibility and mobility of the Centaur cavalry and Grey Wolf knights. He led the Centaur cavalry and Grey Wolf knights on a large detour on the prairie to return to this place. With the vision and guidance provided by Black Dragon Rosani in the sky, they easily avoided the direct routes of those Jackal Wolf men. They crouched on the leeward side of the hills near the Jackal Wolfman lair, ready to catch them off guard when those Jackal Wolf men returned extremely relaxed to the lair. These centaurs ran much faster than those Jackal Wolf men, so even after circling a large portion of the prairie, they still had enough rest here. Now, these centaurs had recovered much of their physical strength, quietly replenishing it with the water pouches and jerky they carried. They were well aware that the real challenge might come next. They never underestimated their enemies nor feared bloodshed. Black Dragon Rosani also lay low on the leeward side of the hills. Under the bright moonlight, the Black Dragon could not be too active, lest it be discovered by the little pets of those Jackal Wolfman mages, alerting them, even though Black Dragons naturally excelled at stealth. Yet, one could not underestimate their enemy's acuity. Black Dragon Rosani only quietly poked his head out, his excellent eyesight allowing the giant dragon to see farther than the giant eagle in the sky. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 110-56, Ashes and Allegiance, Double Length, _3. Chapter 110, Chapter 56, Ashes and Allegiance, Double Length Chapter, _3. Those foul-smelling Jackal Wolf men are here, the Black Dragon said to Karon beside him. From afar, Black Dragon Rosani could detect the enemy's presence, even though the Jackal Wolf man troops in the distance were just black dots in the eyes of the centaurs. And the massive Achilles dragons caught the Black Dragon's attention. These dragon beasts, with tough skin and coarse hair, with scythe-like claws, were almost as large as the Black Dragon. As the Black Dragon ages, its face and body increasingly resemble a skull, with degenerative changes occurring around the root of its horns and cheekbones. Hence, it is sometimes referred to as a skeleton dragon. Now, Black Dragon Rosani is in the young dragon stage, so not too pronounced, but still slender. Even though it measures over 7 meters long, it looks friendlier than the Achilles dragon. However, even if these dragon beasts grew stronger, in the eyes of giant dragons, they were just prey. Having hunted numerous such beasts purely relying on claws and themselves during childhood with Karon. Yet, for the Jackal Wolf men, these massive dragon beasts were formidable beasts. Black Dragon Rosani couldn't sense the aura of the Jackal Wolf men riding the Achilles dragons, but he knew that their leader must be powerful. Be careful later, the leader of the Jackal Wolf men is probably strong, able to tame such predatory and ferocious dragon beasts like the Achilles dragons. Black Dragon Rosani shared what he observed. All these young dragons admired the Centaur tribe warriors, especially Black Dragon Rosani, who appreciated the wild beauty of galloping horses on the prairie in his youth, and the Centaur warriors fit this aesthetic. The dragon-blooded Centaur warrior, Karon, squinted towards the approaching shadows and nodded in response. Dragon's beloved never fears challenges. Then turned to the resting cavalry captains, including Kali, and instructed, pick up your weapons and bows, prepare for battle. Thunderous noises. The Jackal Wolfmen warriors ran towards their nest behind their leader. Having approached their nest, they had relaxed their vigilance, and their formation, initially relatively orderly, was now scattered and chaotic like the goblins and kobolds. The Jackal Wolfman mages also recalled their night crows and vultures, never imagining an enemy presence near their nest. All nearby tribes potentially threatening the Jackal Wolfmen had been slaughtered or enslaved by them, even those ferocious beasts with their tribes, only becoming food and domesticated fowl for the Jackal Wolfmen. The Jackal Wolfman scouts lazily gathered their mounts, the Earth Wolves, into the large Jackal Wolfmen force. Those arrogant Jackal Wolfman barbarian soldiers casually hung their weapons on their mounts' flanks. Even the Jackal Wolfman leader, Yugu, had let down his guard. He led his tribe into the hills, looking at the still faintly flickering with flames and bright entrance of the underground lair, just 2 or 3 miles away, and suddenly froze. At the entrance of the underground lair, centaurs, kobolds, and green-skinned goblins gradually appeared on the hills on either side, aiming their longbows like hunters targeting prey and raising their javelins, targeting the warriors of the Jackal Wolfman tribe. A black dragon, glistening with dark silver under the bright moonlight, flapped its wings, ready to take off and hunt its prey. He and the warriors of the Jackal Wolfman tribe were surrounded by the opposing forces, with kobolds and goblins on both sides glaring ferociously, and the centaurs on the opposite side emanating a heavy murderous aura. The enemy was menacing and sinister, and he had not received any warning. "Damn, I was careless," thought the Jackal Wolfman leader, Yugu, shouting, "Be on guard, prepare to fend off those arrows." Before the Jackal Wolfman leader finished speaking, the Jackal Wolfman warriors had yet to react when a storm of arrows descended like a dark cloud. Hum, swoosh. The mighty arms of the centaurs drew each bow to a full moon, the sound of bowstrings vibrating like a drone, and the iron-tipped arrows pierced through the air with a sharp, whistling sound, crashing down on the Jackal Wolfman's ranks. Kobolds and green-skinned goblins also released their short arrows and javelins. Despite their lesser strength, the barrage of arrows and short lances from a high vantage point still inflicted damage. After all, the Jackal Wolfmen only possessed greater strength, not scales that ordinary weapons struggled to pierce like the dragons. Ugh! Unprepared, the Jackal Wolfmen were pierced through the head and bodies by arrows. Even their sturdy dragon hide robes couldn't stop the arrow attacks, letting out brief cries of pain before collapsing to the ground. The mounts below, the earth wolves and dragon beasts, panicked and scattered, some even dashing with Jackal Wolfmen corpses among their ranks, causing chaos. The Jackal Wolfman leader, Yugu, swung his heavy flail, blocking all the incoming arrows tight. Only the Achilles dragon beast beneath him took an arrow. It was about to roar in pain but was subdued by a heavy punch from Yugu, whimpering submissively. Bang! Yugu swung his flail, smashing a frenzied dragon beast's head to bits, shouting loudly, "Don't run wildly, gather and follow my orders." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 111-56, Ashes and Allegiance, Double Length, Part 4. Chapter 111, Chapter 56, Ashes and Allegiance, Double Length, Part 4. Submit or die. The centaur Karon on the hill stepped forward, not ordering another attack, his tall figure holding a massive longbow, aiming at the pack leader of the Jackal Wolfmen, and shouted loudly. "Submit or die," shouted all the centaur warriors and grey wolf knights in unison, their thunderous voices echoing across the hills, while the giant dragon in the sky also roared. "Submit or die." Dragon descendant. Jackal Wolfman Yugu's blood-red pupils widened, looking at the agitated tribe and the corpses sprawled on the ground. Within just one round of attacks, the tribe had lost over 100 powerful warriors. Furthermore, the Jackal Wolfman mages were particularly targeted. Without any precaution, these mages were as fragile as paper, with several already dead. Yet the Jackal Wolfman leader before them remained defiant. Though he could see the difference in the dragon-blooded centaurs across from him, their strength was not enough to be his match. Moreover, the black dragon in the sky, though a pure-blood true dragon, was too small, only a little over 7 meters, appearing weak and fragile. Such a frail body could scarcely wield much power, not enough to inspire thoughts of submission. Thus, he propelled his mount, the Achilles dragon beast, forward, laughing loudly, "I'd rather be the head of a prairie grouse than the tail feather of a phoenix. You want me to submit? Only if you can defeat me in battle." Jackal Wolfman Yugu looked disdainfully at the black dragon perched on the hill, saying, "Do you submit willingly just to a black dragon? It's not even a red dragon. Truly, you are a race that loves to be slaves. Mind your words, Jackal Wolfman. We belong to the dragon group, and black dragons are noble members of that group. As for the red dragon, I dare say you would not relish meeting his wrath. Bow before the giant dragon or choose death." Chiron's face turned cold. "Even a red dragon in its young dragon stage cannot thwart my might." The defiant Jackal Wolfman leader finally declared his stance with action, waving the heavy three-headed flail and shouting, "Charge with me and slay all these foes. I want to see the power of these giant dragons. Kill them." The riotous Jackal Wolfmen followed their leader's charge, while the Jackal Wolfman mages boosted the charging Jackal Wolfman barbarian soldiers with their magic abilities. "Vile creatures, how dare you challenge the dignity of a true dragon!" Black Dragon Rosani erupted in fury upon hearing the Jackal Wolfman leader's words. Being taunted within the dragon group was one thing, for they could not defeat them, but being scorned by such a lowly race made his evil dragon blood boil with rage. Black Dragon Rosani spread his wings, unleashing the dragon power of a young dragon, roaring in the sky, with the spiritual light of magic flowing about him, motioning to strike. Meanwhile, the centaur warriors and dogman warriors had already unleashed a rain of arrows until they depleted their quivers. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The rapid arrow rain shot down a large swath of charging Jackal Wolfman warriors, but the protective spells from the Jackal Wolfman mages provided these warriors with defense and strength enhancement, allowing many to stand back up, continuing their charge. Some Jackal Wolfman mages recited spells, and a shroud of mist appeared on the battlefield, from which ghastly, tusked ghouls emerged, joining the Jackal Wolfman army's charge. "Drop the bows, charge with me for the dragons." Karon discarded the longbow with no arrows, gripping his weapon tight. "For the dragons! For the master!" The other centaur warriors also tossed their bows aside and drew the long spears from their waists, quickly forming into an attack formation, charging down the hill. The dog-headed kobolds and green-skinned goblins on grey wolves also charged down the hill, harassing from behind with javelins and blowguns. The Jackal Wolfman and centaur forces clashed mid-hill like a surging tide. Boom! The spell shield placed on Jackal Wolfman Yugu by his mages shattered instantly under the intense impact. The centaurs, charging down from a height, carried great power and momentum. The robust iron spears in Chiron's hands shattered the formidable spell shield that could resist a young giant dragon's strike. Yet Jackal Wolfman Yugu abandoned his mount at the moment of collision, slapping the mighty Achilles dragon beast under him, leaping onto its massive back to the left, vaulting over the initial and strongest wave of impact as his spell shield shattered. The enormous Achilles dragon under him became the first barrier to weaken the centaur cavalry's impact. Spanning over 6 meters, the dragon beast, abandoned by its master, could not withstand the charge of the descending centaur cavalry. The towering dragonkin centaurs were not much weaker than the dragon beast in strength, and charging downwards, Karon directly knocked aside the Achilles dragon, tumbling it down the hill like a tossed sandbag, unable to hold even half a second. The centaur cavalry followed down, crashing into the charging Jackal Wolfman ranks. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 112-56, Ashes and Allegiance, Double Length. Chapter 112, Chapter 56, Ashes and Allegiance, Double Length. Despicable reptile, your head will become my toy. Black Dragon Rosani was no longer as lenient as he was in the dragon group, He showed his cruel black dragon nature, targeting Jackal Wolfman leader Yugu, who had dodged the attack. The black dragon roared and swooped down from the sky, his broad wings slightly flapping, skimming over the head of Jackal Wolfman leader Yugu, then spewing acid breath that could corrode weapons and armor. Furthermore, the magic spell he awakened was released under the catalysis of magic power. Under the bright moonlight, a darkness suddenly enveloped around the Jackal Wolfman's body, causing the Jackal Wolfman to lose his vision. The blood-red eyes of the Jackal Wolfman leader suddenly turned pitch black, like ordinary humans in the darkest night without starlight and fire. Even those possessing dark vision, Jackal Wolfman couldn't penetrate this deep darkness. You could only vaguely see the shadow of the black dragon, as the black dragon's spell mastery was not complete. However, Jackal Wolfman leader Yugu, with strong combat intuition and talent, hurriedly dodged aside, the heavy three-headed flail carrying a sharp, wind-breaking roar striking towards the imagined abdomen of the black dragon. Having been tempered in the gladiatorial arena, Black Dragon Rosani was no longer the creature that only hunted beasts as he once was. He knew his abdomen had no scale armor defense, and the three-headed flail was a heavy weapon, even covered in dragon scales, couldn't block the damage from heavy blows. Therefore, he had long controlled the distance. The heavy three-headed flail roared past under his abdomen, the swirling gust remarkably stimulated a sense of threat in his abdominal muscles. Swish! The black dragon seized this opportunity in a flash, his long tail swinging at the last moment, no weaker than the force of a heavy hammer, crashing down on the temporarily visually impaired Jackal Wolfman. Bang! Jackal Wolfman Yugu's excellent combat intuition and sensitive ears helped him block this hit. The thick and long handle of the three-headed flail collided with the black dragon's tail. The black dragon only felt his tail go numb, but immediately turned back to pounce once more. He was preparing to take advantage of the Jackal Wolfman leader's visual impairment when, suddenly, the Jackal Wolfman's blood-red eyes burst forth with bright light. A powerful aura rose from the Jackal Wolfman's body. The heavy three-headed flail carrying unparalleled terrifying force flew from the Jackal Wolfman's hand, heading towards the black dragon's chest and abdomen. Damn it! Black Dragon Rosani saw the heavy flail wrapped in enormous power whistling towards him was no longer able to widen the gap. He could only place his wings and sturdy limbs before his chest and abdomen. Boom! Intense shockwaves and impacts transmitted from the wing and limb. The black dragon's wing bones and limb bones were directly shattered by the heavy flail, though the cushioning mitigated much of the force, still severely injuring the young dragon. Roar! Black Dragon Rosani let out a painful roar, falling from mid-air. Karon's massive body floated and sank continually in the churning magma lake. Heat and the thick smell of sulfur surrounding the red dragon, countless heat and magic energy seeped into the red dragon's scale armor, absorbed by the red dragon's skin. Now, under abundant magic energy and nutritional supply, the red dragon's body had reached over 14 meters. Even the adolescent blue dragon Axi was only 14 meters in length. Now, Karon had exceeded the adolescent blue dragon Axi, becoming the largest and longest giant dragon of the dragon group, and with the current physique, perhaps blue dragon Axi no longer even has the qualification to challenge red dragon. Under the talent of super-limit state growth, Karon grew almost every moment, and the red dragon seemed somewhat contrary to common rule. Generally, organisms and giant dragons grew faster during younger ages, slowing as they grew older until growth completely stops. But Karon was just the opposite. He was developing faster than during hatchling periods. It seemed that with increasing age, his growth accelerated, particularly after entering the volcanic magma sleep. Presently, Karon's condition had elements similar to dolphins, one brain in thought, the other in sleep. His primary brain entered a resting state, but the sub-brain still operated, with countless magic runes and spell models and formulas flowing within. And just at the moment Black Dragon fell in the distance, the sub-brain, filled with endless information, suddenly emitted a signal, activating the sleeping red dragon. It was the seed of shelter planted on the young dragons within the dragon group. Once any young dragon faced mortal danger, information would be transmitted to Karon, who could then sense the giant dragon's location and state through power of heart energy. So, the red dragon buried in the dark red magma lake opened his eyes. The sleeping dragon was disturbed, his massive body emerged from the boiling magma, hot molten streams slid off his crimson scales, like raindrops rolling off a lotus leaf. Rumble! The red dragon stretched his broad, strong wings, the wings growing with his body cast a shadow over half the magma lake under moonlight projection. Fierce winds arose flat out, stirring the boiling scalding magma. The red dragon leapt from the volcano, straight upwards into the upper 9 heavens. You don't seem afraid of death's arrival, noble giant dragon. The powerful and cunning jackal wolfman leader Yugu looked at the black dragon with an unchanged face. Even severely injured, enduring the pain of broken bones, young black dragon Rosani's countenance was still filled with the dragon's pride and ferocity. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 113-56, Ashes and Allegiance, Double Length. Chapter 113, Chapter 56, Ashes and Allegiance, Double Length. If I and these beloveds do not return to the dragon nest before dawn, the dragon group will trace our path, and you won't want to face the wrath of the dragon group. Even if you've touched the domain of the holy sanctuary, Karon's wrath is a price you can't bear. The black dragon's face was marked with a cold smile, and he held blind faith in the red dragon. You all always pride yourselves as members of the dragon group. I remember that you black dragons always liked to live in solitude. How could you join the dragon group? Is the dragon group a family established by a blue dragon? The family leader should be an adult blue dragon, isn't it? Out of some concern, the jackal wolfman leader Yugu did not kill the black dragon. He was also probing for information about the dragon group through words, which would determine his next actions and choices. You don't need to probe. I can tell you, the family leader is just a young dragon, a young red dragon. Black dragon Rosani glanced at Yugu, who was different from the ordinary jackal wolfman. He continued, if you cannot make a decision for now, I suggest you have your warriors stop. These beloveds are loved by Karon. Karon would be angry about their loss. The battle prowess of the centaur warriors was indeed strong, especially under the lead of dragon-blooded centaur Karon. They could charge back and forth in the jackal wolfman ranks, with many jackal wolfmen falling under the iron hooves of the centaur warriors. But the number of centaur warriors was too few, and there was a significant gap in numbers between the jackal wolfmen and centaurs, and those warriors stationed at the jackal wolfman lair who heard the commotion also rushed out to support. The jackal wolfman warriors, reinforced with fresh troops, became even more fearless. These centaurs not only needed to face the entanglement of the powerful jackal wolfman barbarian soldiers but also had to contend with the magical interference and support of the jackal wolfman mages. There was also the guard corps of jackal wolfmen riding dragon beasts, and they were also wary of the black dragon's predicament. As a result, many centaurs were wounded, and dozens of centaur warriors lay permanently on this land, surrounded. Though Karon had done well enough, some things were always unexpected, such as the far stronger than average jackal wolfman leader Yugu and these unexpectedly disciplined jackal wolfmen. Do giant dragons care about these beloveds? Yugu seemed to hear an unamusing joke, and you seem very confident in the abilities of the red dragon. Of course, not only is he the king of the dragon group, but also the master of the wasteland and forest, leading the dragon group from weakness to strength, adored by giant dragons and beloveds. Black dragon Rosani, speaking of Karon, was like a younger brother talking about an admiring elder brother. Karon's greatness is only comparable to those powerful giant dragons in the dragon heritage with unique titles. Even the same age golden dragons are far inferior to Karon. He is the only one I've seen who can control and harness evil dragon blood, especially being the most frenzied and chaotic red dragon. If it is truly as you say, then perhaps the dragon group is worthy of the jackal wolfman's allegiance. But if the giant dragons of the dragon group are all as weak as you, I think I will become what those boring human minstrels call a dragon slayer. The jackal wolfman leader's face remained unmoved. he only believed in what his eyes saw. Rumble. The sky suddenly resounded with a sound like the explosion of thunder, the urgent sonic booms chasing the thunder from afar. A blazing flame swiftly fell from the 9 heavens above, its fiery tail streaking through the air with a white line, cleaving through the night sky fiercely. That surging flame seemed faster than sound. Yugu, the Jackal Wolfman leader, gazed in amazement towards the sky. Under the moonlight, amidst the flaming blaze, a massive figure revealed its true form. Black Dragon Rosani was also somewhat surprised but then showed a cold and sharp smile. Jackal Wolfman, pray for yourself, pray that you get what you seek. Snap! The intense sonic boom pursued the massive object across the 9 heavens, enveloped in the blazing flame. The red dragon plummeted from the heavens as if a divine punishment had slashed it down to the mortal realm. Whoosh! Boom! The self-assured strength of the Jackal Wolfman leader Yugu felt an overwhelming spiritual oppression descending, along with the boundless heat and scorching purgatory of the spiritual pressure. The enormous body of the red dragon landed directly atop his head, and the Jackal Wolfman leader, momentarily dazed, finally felt the utmost mortal peril awakening the mind suppressed by the terrifying momentum. He shuddered, quickly bending his knees and launching himself with unimaginable strength, leaping dozens of meters away. Rumble! The impact of the red dragon crashing onto the ground was so immense, creating a large crater in the solid earth. A powerful shockwave spread from the giant dragon's landing point, flinging the grass on the prairie, earth shooting up, and huge rocks rolling. Nearby Jackal Wolfman warriors were knocked over by the shockwave, their internal organs impacted, blood trickling from the corners of their mouths. The fierce shock made the entire field silent, even the brawniest Jackal Wolfman barbarian soldiers halted and distanced themselves from the scorched purgatory. Affected Black Dragon Rosani let out a miserable cry, his wounds aggravated by the intense shockwave. Luckily, his heavy weight prevented him from being blown away. When the dust settled, standing proudly atop the hill with his entire body covered in menacing scale armor, the red dragon had daunting horns. The surroundings ignited into a blaze. The grassland scorched, earth parched, rocks shattered, and all things melted. His scarlet, indifferent eyes calmly gazed down at the stunned Jackal Wolfman leader. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 114-56, Ashes and Oath of Allegiance, double length. Chapter 114, Chapter 56, Ashes and Oath of Allegiance, double length. Is this the young dragon? Jackal Wolfman Yugu looked at the massive body of the red dragon, its entire form emanating the residual heat and sulphurous breath, making the red dragon seem as if it had returned from an endless purgatory. The rugged and muscular body resembled iron castings, exuding unparalleled strength and violence, and the branched dragon horns were the scepter of the giant dragon's power, the crown of the demon king. The grotesque head, covered with spikes on both cheeks, was the embodiment of authority and ferocity, with fearsome white fangs that were the treasure sword of the dragon cutting through the constraints of the noble family, and a long, spiked tail that served as the giant god's whip shattering the shackles of the world. I can't defeat this red dragon, the thought flashed through the mind of the Jackal Wolfman leader, and his desire to challenge the giant dragon had sunken deep into the abyss, buried by the putrid mud. Yugu bowed its always proud head deeply, lamenting, "Honorable." Boom! The enormous body of the red dragon appeared exceptionally agile, its turbulent fire prison serving as a bridge spanning horizons, slapping the Jackal Wolfman leader into the dirt with a single strike. Poof! Even the naturally gifted Jackal Wolfman leader, who touched the edges of the holy sanctuary, appeared fragile before the casual swipe of a giant dragon, akin to a child before an adult. Yugu's bones felt nearly broken, a gush of blood spurted out, and he lay limply on the ground. Karon, Black Dragon Rosani limped forward but did not approach the fire prison, and greeted. The red dragon nodded, then turned to the Jackal Wolfman lying on the ground and said, "Stand up, Jackal Wolfman. I don't like it when someone shows such humility before me." Jackal Wolfman Yugu hurriedly scrambled to his feet, forcing himself to stand tall. Boom! Karon slapped the standing jackal wolfman Yugu away again, saying coldly, "You should learn humility before a giant dragon." The jackal wolfman barbarian soldiers and jackal wolfman mages exchanged looks, not daring to move. Cough, cough, the jackal wolfman leader Yugu, constantly coughing up blood, supported his body with his hand and knelt down towards the red dragon, remaining silent. "Karon, these jackal wolfmen should submit now," Black Dragon Rosani said, seeing the fire prison dissipate, attempting to persuade the red dragon. Karon nodded, his eyes sweeping over the battlefield filled with the corpses of centaurs, then narrowed his eyes. Suddenly, a crimson line of fire ignited from the red dragon's chest and abdomen, quickly spreading to its throat. The red dragon opened its mouth, where the torrent of magic power merged with a blazing inferno, and the ferocious dragon fire overwhelmed everything, spraying out in a cone-shaped flame. Whoosh! The flame swept over those still hesitant jackal wolfman barbarian soldiers, scorching their bodies, eliciting sharp screams of agony. "Raise the magic shield!" The jackal wolfman mages screamed, and a thick magic shield rose from around them to meet the all-consuming dragon fire. Crackle! The thick magic shield quickly weakened, and the dense spiritual light rapidly withered under the dragon fire, eventually shattering after a few breaths, roasting the magic-depleted mages into charcoal. The red dragon moved its head, casting destructive dragon fire upon jackal wolfmen surrounding the centaur, who wailed in despair, unable to resist without a leader, nor escape under the giant dragon's watch, turning into ashes on the spot. The dragon beasts attempting to flee also received the red dragon's attention, and once the concentrated flame touched their fur, it clung to them like marrow to bone, until the host was reduced to ash. The jackal wolfman leader Yugu, kneeling nearby, felt the high temperature of the dragon fire searing his face, yet an icy dread crept up his back, but he kept his head low, not daring to speak. This terrifying scene frightened those usually ferocious jackal wolfmen, and finally, some realized, kneeling down to the ground, shouting loudly, "The jackal wolfmen are willing to submit to the great true dragon, to become the loyal servants of the giant dragon, living for the giant dragon's will." Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlov.com. Chapter 115-57, Divine Sealing Dragon. Chapter 115, Chapter 57, Divine Sealing Dragon. The dawn is approaching, and the rising sun has already faintly appeared on the horizon. Although Karon stopped the increasingly terrifying dragon fire as the dragons grew after these jackal wolfmen submitted under the feet of the giant dragon, the entire grassland between the hills was turned to wasteland by the red dragon. Those monsters that perished were also turned to ashes by the dragon fire, awaiting rebirth alongside the green life buried deep under the yellow earth. For Karon, these clever jackal wolfmen trained with a certain degree of discipline are suitable beloved of the giant dragon. Hence, he must control the desire for destruction and the fire of rage brought by the evil dragon blood. Attention must be paid because the influence of the evil dragon blood will also increase with his own growth, like maintaining a particular mindset and a state akin to vigilant solitude. Thus, even though each release of dragon fire and destruction brings the red dragon great pleasure, making him greatly enjoy and indulge in this unbridled feeling. But soon it will be consciously restrained by Karon. Controlling the will of the evil dragon blood has become his instinctive subconscious. He destroys only what he wants to destroy, kills only whom he wishes to kill. Under the grind of such will and mindset, Karon always has a feeling that after he surpasses the suffocating stage of youth, a great evolution and improvement will come. From the long-term development of the dragon group territory and his interests, accepting the fealty of these jackal wolfmen is also the optimal choice that the red dragon, as master of the dragon clans, should make. Moreover, he has already displayed the power and majesty of the giant dragon, establishing absolute authority before these evil races that only fear power, also punishing the jackal wolfman tribe. After the war with the dragon's beloved and the dragon's punishment, this jackal wolfman tribe, plus the enslaved giant demon bear goblins, has nearly 600 members. This number, combined with the power of the Jackal Wolfmen, still counts as a relatively powerful tribe, and these Jackal Wolfmen will provide fresh blood for the giant dragon territory, which urgently lacks manpower. The remaining Jackal Wolfmen, led by Jackal Wolfman leader Yugu, will relocate their tribe to the core area of the Dragon Group territory to settle down and receive redistribution, while the remaining Centaur warriors and Grey Wolf Knights will act as supervisors of the Jackal Wolfmen's escort. However, these Jackal Wolfmen are the closest to civilization among the monster tribes that Karon has seen, possessing their own Jackal Wolf language, a relatively stable and clear social class structure, with divisions of labor clearly defined within the tribe. Furthermore, these Jackal Wolfmen have accumulated a certain amount of wealth, including domesticated poultry animals and cultivated crops in their nests. This is a crop resembling dogtail grass on the grasslands, which yields a considerable portion of the tribe's grain annually under the crude planting management of the Jackal Wolfmen. After these Jackal Wolfmen leave, the vacant nests will become temporary bases and fortresses for those kobolds and green-skinned goblins who ride grey wolves daily to patrol the giant dragon's territory. However, Karon does not care about these things. The current dragon group already lacks the wealth accumulated by the Jackal Wolfman tribe, nor does he intend to seek treasures in the Jackal Wolfmen's treasure vault, instead returning directly to the dragon's dragon nest with Black Dragon Rosani. When the two giant dragons landed on the mountaintop, Karon saw the figure of Green Dragon Antagena, the beautiful female dragon with a jade-like sheen crawling on the mountain where the young dragons usually gather and rest in the morning sun. The green dragon's slender neck, along with her head, lay on a stone-carved round low table, while idly flapping her long tail and slowly yawning. The green dragon was responsible for the dragon group territory surveillance last night, so she appeared somewhat sleepy without sleep, waiting for the young dragons who had slept enough to come out and take over the surveillance duties. Karon, Rosani. Antagena noticed the arrival of the red dragon and the black dragon, and she climbed up in a roll, with her slender neck rubbing against the shoulder of the red dragon, this slightly intimate greeting style limited to the red dragon, while for the black dragon, she only greeted simply. To be honest, Karon feels he possesses two conflicting yet unified aesthetics. On one hand, he feels that Green Dragon Antagena's appearance is not beautiful, especially with the bat wing-like spiny growth on the green dragon's head and spine that he finds very ugly. On the other hand, the giant dragon's instinctive aesthetics tell him that the green dragon before him is a rare beauty, seen as quite a beautiful giant dragon among the five-color dragons according to the dragon's viewpoint. Thus, although Karon knows Green Dragon Antagena always deliberately pleases him, he never responds. "Was everything smooth last night, Rosani?" the green dragon casually asked, unaware that Karon had stepped out of the nest for the black dragon and only thought they happened to return simultaneously. Black Dragon Rosani glanced at the red dragon, then at the green dragon, and answered softly, "It was okay." Karon was unaware of the black dragon's thoughts, just went to the edge of the mountaintop plateau to look down, overlooking his territory. The territory started to become lively in the morning. Besides those rotating shifts of Beloved at the foot of the mountain, other active figures of Beloved have already appeared one after another. The Kobold tribe, the earliest followers of the giant dragon and most useful to it, was permitted to open homes at the foot of the Dragon Nest mountain range. Settling nearby the migrated Centaur tribe. The ogre slaves and green-skinned goblins reside on the edge between the Dogman camp and Centaur camp, facilitating the dragon's Beloved in monitoring and controlling these two races. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 116-57, Divine Sealing Dragon. Chapter 116, Chapter 57, Divine Sealing Dragon. Thus, at the foot of the mountain, many newborn kobold offspring and centaur offspring have appeared. These two tribes, under stable living conditions, are now in a period of rapid population growth, with new births every month. Although the ogre slaves and goblin tribe hold relatively low status within the giant dragon territory, the bountiful territory of the dragon group can still provide ample food. Even entering the forest to dig for wild vegetables and gather mushrooms can easily sustain these creatures, whose life force is much stronger than that of humans. However, the young of these ogre slaves and green-skinned goblins are not allowed to roam freely within the territory, partly due to issues of hierarchical status. On the other hand, the particularly brutal kobold offspring always enjoy tormenting these slaves young, leading to a high mortality rate among ogre and green-skinned goblin offspring. This is due to the racial nature and hierarchical differences of these monsters. Even though the dragons do not appreciate such behavior, it is difficult to change in the short term. Moreover, the dragons cannot focus on these details every moment. Karon's gaze at this time focused on the newborn offspring of these beloved. These newborns appear particularly strong and vigorous, with better physical conditions than their parents had at the fledgling stage. Some of the kobold offspring residing at the foot of the Red Dragon Mountain even grow dense red scales, only showing white skin on their chest and abdomen, and the short horns on their heads differ from their parents, being thicker and longer. Occasionally, there are even kobold offspring that grow wings. Such offspring usually become leaders among their peers, leading a group of kobold offspring to wreak havoc in the dense forests at the mountain's base. They dig pits and then set traps with alarm systems that trigger crossbow arrows. This innate talent is displayed vividly in these kobold offspring. As for the centaur offspring, they show no particular changes, they just become stronger. Perhaps the inherent talent of the centaurs is much stronger than that of the kobolds, so the dragon's influence is not yet apparent on them. Clearly, even though Karon resides high above on the mountain peak, he is still uncontrollably influencing these kobold beloved, causing them gradually to change. However, Karon himself does not know if these kobold beloved are influenced due to the nest effect or because the kobold bloodline is naturally more susceptible to the dragon's influence. After all, in Karon's impression, only a legendary giant dragon possesses a nest effect broad enough to affect a wide range, and the nest effect of a giant dragon below legendary level is generally limited to the surroundings of its own cave. And as Karon's nest is at the mountain peak, theoretically, it is very difficult to influence these kobold beloved. Initially, Karon tried actively to control the nest effect of the giant dragon, but with little success. Therefore, Karon chose to build his nest on the mountain to reduce the influence on the surrounding environment. After all, the changes a red dragon makes to the environment are not as relatively gentle as those of a green dragon. At that time, the grasslands and forests would be full of cracked earth and unquenchable wildfires. The destructive power of other young dragons is also not far off, especially the white dragon and the blue dragon. The blue dragon causes the nearby land to gradually become desertified, while the white dragon turns its locale into a natural icehouse. Karon does not want to destroy the surrounding environment. This is not because the evil dragon suddenly has a kind heart, but because a well-preserved territory can bring more benefits to the dragon group. He now needs to view most issues from the perspective of the master of the dragon clans. Karon shook his head. No wonder those five-color dragons who built their nests near human and other racial civilizations were often slaughtered or, at the least, driven away after a beating. Even if these five-color dragons stayed obediently in their nests, hoping to grow quietly, the increasing influence on the environment would eventually be discovered by the surrounding humans. It's safe to say that, whether actively or passively, every five-colored giant dragon surviving in the world causes destruction at all times. And merely the permanent environmental damage is enough for these humans to have a reason to attack the five-colored giant dragons. In Karon's blood-red pupils, the world underwent some kind of change, as if suddenly switching to another kind of vision, the entire world became real and concrete. In the real world, countless entwined and flowing lines and energy trajectories compose it: the yellow earth, blue water ripples, the azure flowing wind, green life, and red flame. These elements operate every moment in the real world, not interfering with each other, yet entangling and merging at certain moments. This is the real vision that the affinity and masters of the elemental domain possess, a part of the true vision specific to Karon himself. Besides, Karon saw many incomprehensible fluctuations and energy line traces that he could not understand, touch, or utilize. But Karon could see that on his body, apart from that mass representing his flame, metal, and the entwined yet distinct elements of earth, there was also a kind of radiation field power without attributes, with energy fluctuations nearly absent, emanating from his body surface and intersecting with a certain energy and node of the real world. This radiation-like power seems to be some uncontrollable kind of passivity, which can gradually form a spreading field in its intersection with the real world, gradually infiltrating every corner within this field. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 117-57, Divine Sealing Dragon. Chapter 117, Chapter 57, Divine Sealing Dragon. Karon's gaze turned towards the lair he inhabited, that volcanic magma lake. In his vision, the power of the radiation field that his unconscious self emitted at all times was converging towards the nest, following some trajectory and trace in the real world. The lair he inhabited, because of prolonged contamination and being a special magic power convergence node, has already formed an extremely special and dense field. This field, in the eyes of those without true sight, can only be felt as a spiritual oppression similar to dragon power, which is why many giant dragons usually restrain their own dragon power, yet many creatures still dare not approach the giant dragon nest. Giant dragons do not mark their territory like ordinary beasts with the scent of urine to mark their lands. Instead, it's this inherent radiation field that converges with some kind of energy in the real world, naturally leaving behind a scent unique to giant dragons. However, despite giant dragons being unable to control the effects and impacts of this power themselves, erasing their own scent is very easy. But at this moment, Karon's radiation field power is not strong enough, not resonating with the field formed by the lair, ultimately disappearing into a corner of the real world. This perspective is extremely clear. Without the interference of the various strong element traces of the volcanic lair, Karon can easily discover his own radiation field power. Karon frowned, recalling that the treasures in the treasure vault he dug alone were also contaminated with this radiation field power unique to giant dragons. Moreover, the treasure that piled up under the influence of the giant dragon's power had gradually formed something akin to a field radiation node and enhancement diffuser. Every giant dragon's abilities in its own nest will be amplified, the specific amplification depending on each giant dragon's talent and level of control. This is why many giant dragons have far greater combat power within their nests than when walking outside. As for the legendary white dragon that was solo defended and slain at its door, Karon could only attribute it to the racial influence of the title of Disgrace of the Five-Color Dragon that affected the performance of the white dragon. However, the fact that treasures within the dragon nest can amplify and diffuse the power and field effects of giant dragons is supposed to be common knowledge. Why isn't this found in the giant dragon's heritage? A bit of doubt arose in Karon's mind. Without such knowledge passed down, ordinary giant dragons would generally find it difficult to discover the existence of this power. They lack Karon's talent for true sight and simply passively control and respond to the elemental talents within the world. Perhaps only when ordinary giant dragons reach adulthood or step into legend can they discover the existence of this power or have this power of contamination. Karon's mind at that moment surfaced with some rumors about giant dragons liking to collect treasures. It is said that these treasures, gold coins, and numerous precious treasures that creatures are passionate about, are laden with the thoughts and wishes of all beings. These are imbued with similar special magic power or power of faith. This kind of power can be absorbed and utilized by giant dragons with special talents, enhancing their abilities and bloodlines, allowing them to leap and evolve at critical moments. Therefore, as long as the world's countless races, as if like the sands of the Ganges, consider what's precious and treasured as treasures, the giant dragon will have the idea of plundering, whether it's money or other treasures. Even a princess from the human kingdom, if possessing such attributes and viewed as a treasure by the respective human kingdom, would be taken by the dragon. And Karon's heritage also mentions that there is a certain path for giant dragons where they must devour all the treasures collected when crossing the final step of evolution and sublimation. Then, through slumber, they evolve and sublimate. After success, they will leap up and transform into a divine sealing dragon, which is also an exclusive path of life sublimation for giant dragons. However, such a crossing ritual requires the dragon to reach a certain life limit to try, at least crossing the boundary of life and death. Because although dragons theoretically can grow indefinitely and hold infinite lifespans, in reality, every dragon will face a test of the world and a limitation of time in the extremely old stage. A successful crossing will become an ancient dragon with more longevity and more significant power. If unsuccessful, they will disappear, returning to death's embrace like other races. Hence, many dragons choose another path of the dragon, becoming a dragon witch demon to extend their life. It's only natural that theory is theory, and reality is reality. This brings us to the white dragon among the 5-color dragons. Other 5-color dragons, after crossing the extremely old age stage and becoming an ancient dragon, generally possess the power to contend against legends, no matter how poor their talents. But an ordinary white dragon, even after becoming an ancient dragon, isn't enough to contend against legends. It must continue to grow to the pinnacle of an ancient dragon to have the power to contend against legends. This point indicates that the title of Disgrace of the 5-color dragon for the white dragon is probably indelible. But in Karon's heritage, the path to becoming a divine sealing dragon is only slightly mentioned, without specifics on how to implement it. Perhaps it is because Karon has not yet reached that stage and needs his life level to reach a certain limit before it will be opened to him. This situation is quite normal since the dragon's heritage is vast like the smoke sea, impossible to transmit all the heritage information to the dragon at once. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 118-57, Divine Sealing Dragon. Chapter 118, Chapter 57, Divine Sealing Dragon. The legacy of the giant dragon must be unlocked and organized through each slumber to transform into knowledge they can master. Even a divine spirit's offspring would be overwhelmed by receiving all the legacy information of the giant dragon at once, let alone these young dragons. Perhaps each dragon needs to attempt their own divine sealing dragon ritual based on their specific situation, with each dragon requiring its own unique method, resulting in the absence of specific knowledge preserved within Karon's legacy. Regardless, this knowledge would not exist within every dragon's legacy, and the world's disparities are vividly exemplified here, perhaps because those dragons who have transcended this step did not choose to pass down this information. This is natural. Dragons are inherently greedy and selfish, their nature is unalterable, caring not about the aftermath once they are gone. Or perhaps those aware of such knowledge do not wish it to be widely spread, fearing that if this path is chosen, all dragons would become potential rivals in competition. Even if dragons don't know this information, their greed drives them to plunder treasures. All the more so if they clearly understand the path of evolution. In that case, the treasures of the world would plunge dragons into an extremely mad state, where wealth becomes more important than life, depicting the majority of dragons, potentially sparking endless dragon wars. Every dragon would covet each other's treasures and vaults, although this is almost the case even normally. Dragons generally do not start wars with other dragons out of greed for treasures. No wonder the statue of the 5-colored dragon queen, Tiamat, always gazes at every dragon believer's dragon nest with extreme greed, thought Karon, noting that even these 5-color dragons who become Tiamat's followers choose not to place the statue in their own nests. The statue is generally placed outside casually, prayers offered when needed, and ignored otherwise. It seems to be a precaution against Tiamat coveting their treasure, and there are legends that the 5-colored dragon queen once stole treasures from some dragons. Karon is unsure of the truth of this information. Yet, based on his own evil dragon nature, Karon speculates that if Tiamat did do such a thing, it wouldn't be surprising. Although the 5-colored dragon queen is a dragon god, she is first and foremost a giant dragon. Her strength doesn't stem from her being a dragon god but from her being a powerful giant dragon, embodying traits and abilities of all 5 color dragons, surpassing them thousands of times over, and magnifying certain characteristics of 5 color dragons in her own form. It seems that some master behind the giant dragon merchant group is also a dragon. Aware of this information, Karon recalled some knowledge, noting that on the continent of Icania, there are several renowned merchant groups controlled by metal dragons, some of which have come to the dragon group territory to conduct business. Karon has a profound impression of these merchant groups because he discovered the aura of true dragons among their leaders, including a silver dragon who used transformation skill to become human. Under Karon's true vision, those dragons who haven't reached the master level transformation skill cannot hide their forms, even if they possess magic treasures to conceal their true dragon aura. It seems I also need to quickly establish a merchant group for the dragon group, Karon contemplated, viewing treasure plundering as merely a low-level tactic. Profits made from business far outpace the speed of treasure plundering, richer than robbing banks. But to embark on this path, the required treasure may be incalculable. Otherwise, information on dragons who succeeded in divine sealing wouldn't be absent from Karon's legacy memories. Though Karon may not necessarily embark on this dragon god sealing path, he is accustomed to preparing in advance. Having a backup path is never a bad thing. Karon urged his own magic power, entering the mental overclocking state, using his powerful will to control himself to enter overclock mode, possessing extreme concentration and absolute control over his body in this state. His strength, speed, perceptive vision, and more are raised to their highest potential, but he wasn't doing this for combat purposes. He was attempting to control the nest effect, the naturally emitted field radiation-like power. His will controlled his body and spirit to constrict, each scale tightly adhered to his skin, and every superficial pore that was usually difficult to detect by ordinary eyes was closing. His power contracted, and the always active evil dragon blood within him entered a dormant state under his will. Karon's spirit began to attempt contact and control of the field radiation power revealed under true vision, this wave-like energy extremely subtle and hard to detect. However, Karon's spiritual power now is sufficiently strong, receiving boosts continually from the full soul spirit of giant demon Fafnir. Now, Karon's spiritual power is nearing that of high-tier scholar mages who are proficient in exploring magical mysteries with spirit, easily attempting contact with the field radiation energy's fluctuations several times, merging his spirit into the wave of field radiation energy. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 119-57, Divine Sealing Dragon. Chapter 119, Chapter 57, Divine Sealing Dragon. He is using spiritual power to find the rhythm and variation of this radiation ability wave, gradually feeling the fusion and resonance between his own domain radiation power and some energy and domain in the outside world. The fluctuation of energy disperses through some medium in the real world, then dissipates after reaching its limit. Thump, thump thump. A rhythm similar to the rapid, slight beating of a heart reacts in Karon's mind. He finds the point of rhythm change at that instant, and his spiritual power blends in. His spiritual power seems to instantly enter a remarkably subtle vision, stepping into the microcosmic domain of the world under the oversight of a macroscopic real vision. Along the radiation wave of power, he can perceive every subtle structure and connection. His spirit can penetrate deep inside a stone by following every tiny structure of the stone, as if discovering the elemental particle structure that constitutes the stone, flowing through the gaps between these elemental particles, every grain of soil, every tree, every ore. He can utilize this radiation wave and external resonance to enter and observe internally, welcoming the opening of the microcosmic world's doors to him. Karon has left his own mark in a true corner of the world. In this rhythmic state, he can restrain the energy fluctuation emitted by his own domain radiation like he gathers his own dragon power, converging with the fluctuation of this domain radiation power. Karon's own aura is like every rock, every tree, every inch of land in the world, no longer emitting his own aura and energy fluctuation, but rather akin to everything in the world, inherently originating. In Black Dragon Rosani's perspective, the red dragon before him had become like a timeless rock standing atop the mountain, almost incapable of perceiving the life fluctuation and soul aura of the red dragon. Phew! Karon withdrew from this resonance, and the peculiar perspective switched away instantly. He exhaled deeply. In front of him was once again lush wild mountains, full of vitality. Karon felt the consumption and fatigue of his spiritual power. Now, in his self-invoked mental overclocking state, he could persist for a long time. He had practiced mastering this state every day in his daily activities prior. So now Karon, after long-term training and adaptation, possesses much greater flexibility and focus than other giant dragons, greatly enhancing his overall combat effectiveness. The relatively clumsy feeling brought by the giant dragon's huge body did not manifest at all on Karon. Alongside, the sub-brain system constantly analyzes and adjusts the red dragon's daily posture and power output model, causing Karon to also be in a continuous practice state in his daily life. But activating the mental overclocking state to explore and constrain with this perspective, he consumed an enormous amount of spiritual power, not enough for him to remain in this state for long. However, the benefits brought by such attempts are tremendous, allowing Karon to feel the condition of opening two states in himself. He happily scratched his broad chin with his sturdy dragon claw, turned to the black dragon Rosani behind him, and smiled. "Rosani, I seem to have learned your race's talent ability, a red dragon that can stealth, quite interesting." Karon's gains were beyond his expectation. Originally, he wished to control this influence not under the giant dragon's control merely because of his habit, accustomed to controlling everything about himself. To outsiders, people with such compulsive-like tendencies for self-control are potential masochists. They enjoy the sense of achievement in controlling themselves, akin to those who indulge in pleasures enjoying the ecstasy of self-control. Karon was no exception. He controlled himself not only to keep his free will from the evil dragon blood and outside influences but also relished in the sense of achievement that successful self-control brought, similar to the achievement he felt seeing his constant improvement and progress. Karon savored this feeling, enjoying indulgence, but he preferred enjoying the process of relaxation after successfully controlling himself. This feeling was like indulgence after self-tempering. So the red dragon wasn't like those ascetics only controlling themselves, he was merely enjoying this success. "Karon, it seems you've grown stronger again," Black Dragon Rosani said with a happy face, stepping up, just one step behind Karon, standing shoulder to shoulder with the red dragon overlooking the territory of the giant dragon. While the figure of green dragon Antagena had already disappeared, presumably returned to her mountain nest to rest. Soaring in the sky was blue dragon Axie. Today, this adolescent blue dragon is responsible for patrolling the dragon group's territory. Karon shook his head, not exactly stronger, more like discovering another way to grow stronger, learning a fairly useful ability. Black Dragon Rosani remained silent, a trace of discouraged emotion appearing on his face. He looked up at the towering red dragon hesitantly. "Karon, I somewhat don't know what I should do. I don't have the powerful talents like you guys. Even though I strive proactively to do something for the dragon group, I still couldn't achieve a successful battle result last night, not only losing many dragons beloved but also needing you to rescue me. I don't know what to do. The giant dragons are also creatures, they, even the five-colored evil dragons, have their vulnerable sides." Black Dragon Rosani had his own vulnerable emotions too, but other giant dragons would laugh at this emotion. Black Dragon only exhibited such emotions in front of the red dragon. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 120-57, Divine Sealing Dragon. Chapter 120, Chapter 57, Divine Sealing Dragon. This was certainly not because the giant dragon was too weak, but rather because Black Dragon Rosani felt the pressure and became agitated. Among the five-color dragons, black dragons are at the lower end, with unremarkable innate abilities. Not to mention the usual red dragons leading the five-color dragons, who can start by taking on two black dragons, even the green dragons can steadily suppress the black dragons in one-on-one duels. Even the weakest white dragon, now that Gomot has grown and trained in heart, has embarked on the path of reviving the ancestral bloodline and can steadily suppress the black dragon in one-on-one duels. As for white dragon Kamid, although considered the underdog in the dragon group, Kamid holds a special place in the hearts of these giant dragons and is never underestimated. Because white dragon Kamid is the most unruly of the giant dragons, even though he is weak, as long as Karon gives the order, he dares to flaunt his claws and fangs. Even if facing an adult dragon, this white dragon seems to have no fear. Even the headstrong female red dragon Kleena cannot match the intensity of this white dragon. Thus, black dragon Rosani now feels troubled and anxious. He does not want to become a burden to the dragon group, he hopes to be useful and prove his worth. The red dragon did not comfort this agitated black dragon. Instead, he turned his head and slapped the face of black dragon Rosani with a thick dragon claw. Slap! Karon! Black dragon Rosani looked at the red dragon with a shocked and puzzled gaze. Rosani, you need to act like a male dragon, what's going on with you? Karon's calm yet powerful voice imbued the black dragon with a sense of tranquility. Is this what you've learned from me and the dragon group? As weak as those human women, the red dragon gazed calmly into the black dragon's eyes. What to do, what kind of nonsense is that? The red dragon's words carried no sarcasm, but were firm and resolute. The world of giant dragons is not the world of humans and those short-lived races, there's no need to rush to hear those tales of youthful success. Rosani, time is on our side. If you want to grow, you must be resolute, or if you wish to grow freely like the other giant dragons, you're always part of the dragon group and it will never abandon you, but you must choose firmly, not hesitate like a coward. Karon gazed at the black dragon, speaking what was in his heart. He would not require every dragon to grow like him or Kleena. Every dragon has its own choices and natural limits, and he accepted the colorful and uneven world. Moreover, whether it's controlling the evil dragon nature or honing oneself through combat, it is extremely difficult for a dragon's lazy and hedonistic nature to change. Karon would not try to change it, he would simply subtly influence some things that could be changed. I understand, Karon. Black dragon Rosani saw assurance and support in the red dragon's eyes, his gaze also became firm, he smiled, damn, there's nothing a dragon can't conquer, Karon, maybe I need to conquer myself as you did. No dragon allows anything to dominate them, not even their own bloodline. Karon's long tail swooshed and struck the back of black dragon Rosani, and he also smiled. That is the attitude a proud dragon should have. Those powerful and proud evil dragons fear not even the dragon god, let alone the influence of some evil dragon blood. Black dragon Rosani nodded, then said sheepishly, but I won't give up those beautiful little mares on the prairie. A dragon should pursue great power, but also needs beautiful embellishments. Though the red dragon understood the dragon's aesthetics, dragons could find unique beauty in all creatures in the world. Even in the ugly slimes and rock giants made of stone, dragons could find unique beauty. However, black dragon's preference was indeed too unique and niche for Karon. For some reason, black dragon Rosani had a special preference for horse-shaped creatures. Even the centaur tribe he had taken under his wing, black dragon Rosani often lingered among them, and now the centaur tribe has the most intimate relationship with black dragon Rosani. Slap! Karon sent black dragon Rosani flying with a flap of his wings, then flapped his own broad wings to soar into the sky, leaving behind his words, control does not mean prohibition, but your preferences and aesthetics, well, never mind, I'm too lazy to care about you. Hee. Black dragon Rosani flipped up from the ground, stretched his wings and soared into the sky, returning to his lair. Swoosh! Karon landed on the mountain top of his lair. The two peaks were not far apart. Now the red dragon's wings, nearly 30 meters long, just a light flap would bring him to his lair. The ever-ascending magma spewed searing heat, and the ash carried from the earth's core shrouded the entire mountain top. Even sunlight found it hard to penetrate these ashes and the thick hot vapor. This made the red dragon's lair appear somewhat dim, much like the doomsday volcanoes in legends. Upon his arrival, Karon's unrestricted field fluctuations instantly connected with the field remaining in his lair. In this lair, the red dragon could grasp the information of every corner, unleashing several times his strength. Even a young red dragon entering Karon's lair would be fiercely beaten and then made to leave treasures to buy life and redeem itself. The initial warning magic spell set by Karon, Wakeful Dream, under the abundant supply of magic power from the volcano, had its range gradually extend from the entire mountain top toward the four directions. However, this spell did not impede other younger giant dragons. Their arrival wouldn't trigger an alert in Karon's settings. Thus, when Karon discovered female red dragon Kleena, secretly hiding in the magma lake pretending to sleep, he wasn't surprised. Karon knew well the benefits of a magma lair for a red dragon's growth, and this female red dragon had always coveted his lair, giving Karon a mischievous pleasure. Subtle magic power quickly gathered between Karon's claws, forming into a fireball under his will. This was his awakened talent skill, not magic, therefore extremely fast. He quietly lifted the fireball and hurled it toward the red dragon in the magma lake. Boom! Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com. Chapter 121-58, Do Not Disgrace the White. Chapter 121, Chapter 58, Do Not Disgrace the White. Awoo! The young red dragon, who had been dozing off with his head tucked under his broad wings, paws wrapped around his tail beneath his chin, slowly opened his eyes. Karon lazily stretched his red wings, which were adorned with magic patterns, yawning long and wide, releasing a burst of fiery sparks from his mouth and nostrils. The red dragon, entering his teenage phase, had scales the size of an adult human's palm, marking the most gentle period in a red dragon's life, transitioning from the bright scarlet of infancy to a deep dark red. His entire body was covered in scales of a red hue with a soft metallic sheen, emitting a faint glow in the somewhat dim volcanic lair, sparkling like a treasure amidst the deep magma. Karon surfaced from the flowing lava, shaking off the dried clumps of magma sticking to him, which slid off his smooth scales, splashing the molten flow in all directions. The red dragon, connected with the field fluctuations of the entire lair, had already detected the presence of the adolescent blue dragon Axie waiting below the mountaintop. In fact, even without the field connection, Karon knew that any solitary dragon's presence outside his lair would certainly be the adolescent blue dragon Axie. For the other young giant dragons would directly venture to the mountaintop, though they wouldn't enter the red dragon's lair, they would still call out, waking Karon, as they were familiar with him and accustomed to this interaction mode. Typically, Karon wouldn't deliberately put on the so-called air of the master of the dragon clans. He found such behavior somewhat foolish. And the young dragons in the dragon group knew well that as long as they didn't challenge Karon's will or decisions, the red dragon was actually quite approachable, more so than the so-called good dragons. The red dragon often appeared more like an elder brother to all the young dragons of this giant dragon race, powerful and tolerant, yet his mischievous character was quite troublesome, infamous enough for those five-color dragons of dubious nature. Only the adolescent blue dragon Axie would patiently wait below the mountaintop when coming alone, not because of his high manners. Expecting a five-color dragon to behave politely was as ridiculous as asking a dwarf blacksmith to embroider. Instead, the adolescent blue dragon seemed unable to fully integrate into the dragon group's core atmosphere. Unlike other young dragons, he didn't grow up, play, hunt, fight, and endure hardships together with them from a young age. The other young giant dragons did not intentionally alienate blue dragon Axie, it was the naturally developed atmosphere, and the adolescent blue dragon Axie was most familiar with white dragon Gomot. He typically appeared alongside white dragon Gomot when the dragon group gathered. Perhaps blue dragon Axie, like black dragon Rosani, hadn't yet found his place within the dragon group. Thus, he had a special respect and awe for Karon, the master of the dragon clans, which Karon keenly noticed. The red dragon shook off the debris from his body, folded his broad wings, stepped to the edge of the mountaintop, and gazed at the patiently waiting blue dragon Axi, his scales glimmering with enchanting hues under the sunset. His body shimmered brightly in the sunlight, yet his head and eyes, turned away from the light, remained in shadow. Blue dragon Axi gazed up at the ever-growing form of the red dragon, his scales wide and even, gleaming like the world's most perfect gemstone, sparking an unrelated yet curious thought in his mind under the unwitting yet growing pressure from the red dragon. If Karon's scales were sold to those greedy human merchants, each might be worth at least 2,000 gold coins. The inherent talent of dragons to appraise treasures surfaced in the blue dragon, triggering a subconscious mental calculation of the value of all the red dragon's scales. "Come forward, Axi, stand by my side." The red dragon lowered his head, calmly observing the blue dragon Axi, whose thoughts were currently filled with golden radiance. To Karon, the blue dragon before him was extremely special. During the dragon group's infancy, before they had the ability to hunt alone, this blue dragon fed and protected the young ones on his own. Nominally, the dragon Carlet, the leader of the dragon group, didn't contribute much effort. After helping blue dragon Axi establish this territory, she simply stayed in her lair, sleeping and hatching dragon eggs of unknown origin. Most of the time, it was Axi maintaining the territory, transforming from a lazy, indulgent five-color dragon to a hard-working model dragon unmatched in the world. In comparison, the adolescent blue dragon Axi appeared more like the head of a giant dragon family than the female blue dragon Carlet. In his view, this transformation seemed more challenging than a giant dragon reviving its ancestral bloodline, even for Karon himself, who sometimes couldn't overcome his own laziness, even though he could now effortlessly control the will of the evil dragon blood. But laziness isn't an exclusive trait of the evil dragon blood, rather it's a universal existence present in every creature, amplified by the evil dragon blood, thus indicating that blue dragon Axi was also, in a sense, moving towards mastering the evil dragon blood. Source: webnovel.com, updated by novlove.com.